Hello. Okay, today I'm going to be reading the second academic reading for the course that I'm taking. It's called Predicament and Pilgrimage, Hearing Families of Deaf Children in Mexico City. Okay, as we go along, I'm just going to be talking about the article that I'm going to be going through and getting my own thoughts on it based on the notes that I've taken and the people that I've also talked to about it. Okay, I'll get on with it then. Okay. We'll go through the abstract first. Oh yeah, this article is by Anne E. Pfister. I think that's how you pronounce it. Okay, in this article I traced the most salient features of Mexican families' complex journeys as they cope with the predicament of childhood deafness. Family support seeking through the theoretical lens of pilgrimage brings on into focus family introspection and captures their tenacity while facing culture-specific obstacles. Ultimately, families in their tendency while facing culture-specific obstacles. Oh, sorry, I just read that line twice. Ultimately, families realized their quests were not fixing their children's hearing, but finding a more reliable communication in sign language. Pilgrimage is a metaphor for the journeys described by participants. Helps us to understand families' realizations that biomedical options most commonly available in Mexico City are limited in efficiency. Reveals a collective desire for alternatives to these options. Hello, I'm just reading through an article on families going through the healthcare system in Mexico to help their deaf children and that sort of thing. It's an interesting article on pilgrimage, so just going on a journey for acceptance and that sort of thing. It's interesting. I'm just going to be commenting on the way through. Feel free to add your own ideas and views as I read if you're interested, but if not, you can just sit back and listen if you want to. Okay. Angel and I made our acquaintance in September 2012 at a beginner level Lingüina de Cienes Mexicana class. Sorry if I butchered the Spanish words in this. I don't know what's with me in reading things in other languages, knowing full well that I'm going to butcher everything. Oh well, just a talent of mine. The course was held on a Friday morning in the art studio of a primary research site, Instituto Pedagógico para Problemas de Lenguaje. I can't pronounce things, I'm so sorry. The Pedagogical Institute of Language Problems, or IPPLIAP for short, I guess. That's an acronym and a half. A semi-private school for deaf children in central Mexico City. The small art studio was packed with adults from all over Mexico City and the surrounding area. The classes started early morning and nervousness among attendees was predictable in the first few meetings. Class introductions revealed that the majority of class attendees were parents of deaf children, mostly hearing mothers. And nearly all were novice signers. I enrolled in the class to brush up on my own, I think it's Latino sign language, or LSM as they refer to it in the acronym, and also to recruit parents as participants for ethnographic interviews. So I introduced myself as a researcher interested in the institution. I don't want to say that acronym again. Community issues. Angel was one of 2 male students registered in the class. The deaf instructor was also male at the time. Angel's 8-year-old deaf son was a 3rd grade student at the institute. Angel told me that he has been between jobs, so he accompanied his son to the institute most mornings and picked him up most afternoons. Eager and outgoing, he befriended me right away and sought me out to regularly say hello and ask how my research is coming along, and make general small talk. Angels was one of the first in over 30 semi-structured interviews with parents of deaf children during an ethnographic investigation between 2013 and 2018 at the Institute. I was interested in the ways hearing parents understood deafness, how and where they sought information and resources, and what influenced the decisions parents made on behalf of their children as they faced frame this article. Hello. At the moment, I'm just reading through an article on deaf parents and their children and coming to accept sign language and sort of like pilgrimage in health. Feel free to comment your thoughts on reading so far if you want me to repeat stuff. Oh, thank you so much. You didn't have to do that. That was so nice of you. Oh, I'm just doing this to get through my academic readings. Oh, thank you. Hope you have a nice day, and I hope this is helpful to you. Okay, where was I? You made me lose my place, damn you. Why are you so kind? Okay. This is what information influenced by parents on behalf of their parents as they face what I frame in this article is Predicament of Deafness, inspired by Shakespeare 2006. Okay. During my interviews, I asked Angel and other participants to reflect upon what they knew about deafness at the time of their children's diagnoses. I asked about their experiences with language and what kinds of resources. Oh, can I be a mod? Sorry, I'm not really a channel. I'm not really a full-on channel at this point. I'm just trying to find my grips, and I'm not entirely sure how any of that really works. So I'll keep you in mind if I have to sort something out like that later. But right now, I'm not really looking for anyone. I don't really. Yeah, this is more of a casual thing for me. Yeah, that's all right. Thank you for the offer, though. Use my place again. Okay. During my interviews, I asked Angel and other participants to reflect upon what they knew about deafness at the time of their children's diagnosis. I asked about their experiences with language and what kinds of resources and information they found most useful. At the heart of this inquiry was my desire to know what led these families to the Institute. Self-described as bilingual, sign language and Spanish, and bicultural, deaf and hearing, school, the Institute's bilingual and bicultural approach was extremely rare educational opportunity in Mexico. The medicalized approaches to deafness, including active dismissal or discouragement of sign language, prevail. Below, Angel recalled a frustrating situation many hearing parents of deaf children experienced: early and ineffective attempts to communicate with their deaf children. Angel said, "Before we learned sign language, we made ourselves understood using home signs and mimicry, and our communication was very limited. We invented our own signs for things, but everything was repetitive. We used books or magazines, but it was all so limited. Our son kept many things inside. Things he was feeling, what he liked. We guessed him by his gesturing or by what we would see him do. But to have a conversation, no, we just couldn't do it. I thought he was only going to be able to express basic things like eat, sleep, and play. I can donate more. It's okay. I'm not really looking for donations, but it's okay. I'm just gonna continue reading if that's okay. Sorry. Okay. Angel's reference to conversation, which literally translates to conversational trot, underscores an important component of family unity that participants valued. In this context, conversation was more than this is a Spanish word. Una plática was more than just a conversation. It referred to bonding or the kind of heart-to-heart chat which parents imparted wisdom, advice, and knowledge onto their children, or anthropologists recognize as language socialization. As families discovered childhood deafness, the majority of them grappled with early fears surrounding communication, that the children would be unable to express themselves, or that they would be limited to rudimentary communication surrounding very basic needs. The predicament of deafness participants experienced were challenges to their expectations for communication within the intimate confines of family. Most parent participants acknowledged a tacit expectation to socialize their children with their own oral languages, later realizing how mismatched biological capacities related to hearing presented significant barriers to naturally occurring language socialization. Here, Angel references and reflects upon his own assumptions and initial emotions he came to realize this. Okay, so that's very interesting. So being a hearing parent and having a deaf child, it's almost like communicating with somebody in their own foreign language. So I can sort of sympathize with that to some degree. And that having to learn a separate language or to communicate with your own child must have been extremely difficult. But as it is their kid, they're willing to do whatever it takes, hence this institution being founded. Which I guess sort of ties into the essence of Pilgrimage for Well-Being, because they desire to provide better well-being and life quality for their children, and they will do whatever it takes to do so, which is very nice, especially since there's a lot of social stigma surrounding it. I wonder if this is how all parents reacted to this, or whether there was any negative interpretations initially. It's very interesting, but this parent seems to be very open and communicative about the fact that he wants to help his child, which is nice. Okay, this experience has been a process, but now I understand many more things. At the beginning, though, I saw it as a broken promise. For example, I would dream about my son calling me Papa. These were things that caused me so much pain, knowing that he was not going to be able to do them. Of particular note is Angel's reflection upon his experience of learning about parenting his deaf son, which he refers to as a process, which resulted in his ability to understand many more things. In the same interview, he elaborated on this. The day that I was completely convinced that we were on the right path by learning sign language was the day my son told me about what he dreamed. He told me about his dream. I was shocked because I never thought he would be able to tell me something like that. But he told me in sign language, I dreamed I was sleeping, and I dreamt that I was big and tall, and I was going to be like you. I'm going to shave, and I'm going to have tattoos and a motorcycle. These excerpts summarize what Angel referred to as his family's path to effective communication with their deaf son through sign language, one that resulted in the intimacy of communication that he pined for and once feared would never occur. He and others described their family's journeys as a series of long, frustrating processes that eventually led to the acceptance of sign language, something which they initially considered impossible. I have selected and compiled and analyzed particular narratives to underscore the most salient features of support-seeking quests, conceptualizing these pilgrimages as Mexican families forged their own complex paths in an effort to cope with the predicament of deafness. Okay, so far in that paragraph, we sort of get like a feeling for what these parents are trying to achieve while communicating with their children, which is very interesting. And that the amount of joy and satisfaction, not to mention like increases in quality of life that comes from making this difference, is so crucial in, being able to establish those relationships, which would otherwise be a lot easier if both parties in the family were hearing. But it also makes it more rewarding that way, despite it being challenging. So, yeah, it's very sweet. And I think we're going to move more into the, the philosophic side of things, because in the next paragraph, we're going to be talking about pilgrimage as a metaphor for understanding family journeys. So this might get a bit technical, and if you have any questions, I might be able to elaborate on some things which might be more difficult to understand. But otherwise, I think you'll be okay. I'm sure you guys are smart enough. Like Angel, most hearing parent participants describe the first months and years after suspecting a child's deafness as a series of exhausting visits to clinics and specialists who warned them against the use of sign language. Due to the public transit and traffic conditions in the vast crowded expanse of Mexico City, the transverse clinics and public health institutions often took families hours. Many participants described their experiences leading up and especially following deaf diagnosis as journeys or paths. Several used the word peregrinación or pilgrimage. The term I adopt here to characterize families' voyages in search of support, information, and services. I specifically chose this institution as my primary research site so I could live among Mexican families who made this relatively rare conversation to a signing community. Participating families reflected upon their early decisions and primarily made in medical contexts, then contrasted those experiences with life and assessing sign language. This reflects a particular space or authoring or authorial stance that they can provide an adequate response to the new situation. In this article, I trace the way participants authored their pilgrimages in response to the predicament of deafness. IPPLIAP, or the institute I was referring to, is a semi-private school dependent on donations offered families a sliding scale tuition. Most of this institute's families operated on a meager to modest earnings. The average monthly income reported to the institutional families was about 5,000 Mexican pesos, or $400 a month, which was when the minimum wage in Mexico City was less than $5 a day. And many outside of the cosmopolitan city area, the mean communicate time was over 2 hours each day. Typically by public transit, and transportation costs consisted of a large proportion of families' budgets. Here I discuss a family that may have been an exception. George was a dentist, and their family had considerably more economic resources than the majority of the families that operated in the institution. They had a car and lived closer to the institute than most other families. George and Clara described themselves as fortunate to have visited the United States through an invitation to a private clinic dedicated to supporting deaf children and families. They were the only family interviewed that traveled to the US temporarily to search for support. Tourist visas and US travel would have been beyond the reach of most families that operate inside the institute. During my interview, they compared their experiences in the US and Mexico, highlighting the indeterminate movement accompanying the frustration in their native city. Like other participants navigating the Mexican public health system, George and Clara referred to themselves as pilgrims on a quest for support for their son. Okay, sorry, I'm going to reread that sentence. George and Clara referred to themselves as pilgrims on a quest for support for their son. George said, "What I want to point out is the difference in our experiences in the US and Mexico. The difference is incredible. In the US, we were taken care of and there was concern for our son. Here in Mexico, we are like pilgrims. We were going from one place to another, from the hospital to that study, from this doctor at that school. We were constantly going from one place to the next. It made us feel frustrated and tired. One truly feels as though they were left in the dark. If you're the first in the family to have a deaf child, you don't have the slightest idea of what to do. So you look for people to help, but nobody knows." Struck by participants' choice of pilgrimage as a metaphor to describe their experience, I the applicability of this term, does pilgrimage work as a theoretical framework for the experiences participants described? What can the metaphor of pilgrimage tell us about Mexican families and experience in the predicament of deafness? Okay, so even in a literal sense, it's sort of described as a pilgrimage in Mexico specifically, because there is no one root solution to the issue of childhood deafness. So it's all about being able to gather resources from many different components, whereas in other wealthier countries with a more established general resources, it may be a lot easier to find help with this sort of thing, especially since we have entire, government institutions and supported areas which help us with taking care of disabled individuals. So in a metaphorical sense, yes, the term pilgrimage would apply to a wealthy parts of society being able to go on this journey to attain wellness or communication with their children. But in Mexico, it's sort of used in a more literal sense when they're having to travel from one place to another in order to seek out the best treatment for their children. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next section of the paragraph. During these internal and migratory journeys, families were forced to confront their own beliefs about language and disability. A profoundly transformative experience of these voyages. They garnered and interpreted information and knowledge constructed in a variety of settings, biomedical, therapeutic, and finally educational environments. Each perspective shaped their beliefs in creating a cumulative experience that complicated their understandings of disability. Promoted realignment toward a more deaf orientation and encouraged agency, especially with the regard of medical authority and associated ideologies. Slavin of 2003 suggests that the term pilgrimage has been appropriated in a modern prevalence to mean most any kind of journey that has an abstract dimension. If a quest to better understand the unfamiliar, in this case deafness, is the abstract dimension, I argue that the concept of pilgrimage is useful for understanding participants' different paths as they cope with the decision on the behalf of their deaf children. Oh, hello! How are you doing? I'm just reading through an academic article on childhood deafness in Mexico. I'm just going to read through it and maybe give some suggestions as to my own thoughts about pilgrimage and healthcare and that sort of thing. And if you have anything that you want to contribute to the conversation, you can just leave a comment down below, okay? And if you want me to reread anything or redefine anything, just say so and I'll do so, okay? Thank you for coming here. And where was I? I argue the concept of pilgrimage is useful for understanding participants' different paths as they cope with decisions on the behalf of their deaf children. There we go. Pilgrimage, as a metaphor for the journeys described by participants, helps us understand the realizations that the biomedical options most commonly available in Mexico City were of limited efficiency. Oh, is this an original work of yours? No, it's an academic article by an anthropologist called Pfister, because she did a study on this in an institution in Mexico City that helps deaf families in communicating with their deaf children. So no, but this is a part of a course that I'm taking to help myself better understand this content. So I'm learning and you're learning. It's a good time. Yeah, but I can still help you if you need me to define any of the language used, because I am kind of familiar with it, so I'd be able to help if you need me to. Okay. Alternatives and options. Stream delay isn't a lot, by the way. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how to fix that. My computer is pretty bad. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think there is much I can do about that. But thank you for letting me know anyway. I'll just continue, and if I see your question a bit late, I'm sorry. Okay. Um. Help us understand the realizations. Okay. We're of limited affiancy, and there's strong collective desire for alternatives to these options. In short, family pilgrimages uncovered how their quests were not fixing their children's language. That kind of makes sense that it's 35 to 45 seconds, I guess, because the computer which I'm filming on is a 2014 MacBook. Yeah, it's like 7 years old. But you know, it gets the job done, I guess. It's fine. I can deal with that. That's fine. I'm okay. Yeah, I apologize if the delay's a bit jarring, but hopefully you can bear with me. Okay. I really need to get on with this. Okay. Oh, I keep losing my place. Okay. And the strong collective desire for alternative options. In short, family pilgrimages uncovered how their quests are not about fixing their children's hearing, but are ultimately about finding a more reliable communication through sign language. Using the concept of pilgrimage to trace family to trace parents' understandings and decisions to help us better equate deafness with illness. Oh, that might be very helpful. Hopefully I can find those settings easily. Stream settings. Is it audio? Audio delay is off. Yeah, stream delay is off. Yeah. It's off, so I think it's just my computer being bad. Sorry. I don't have a delay on, so I think it's just my computer being dumb, in all honesty. But I can look into those settings later and see if they can help, but I guess for this stream, but I don't think there's much I can do about it because there isn't any delay on my computer or like in the settings that I've looked at. So I think I'm just gonna have to deal with this. Do you mean it's like video delay or audio delay or just delay in general? If it is delay in general or audio, I don't have either of those on. So I think it might just be my computer. Yeah, it is very odd. Yeah, I wish it wasn't like that, but oh well. It's okay. That's what you get for streaming on a literal brick, I guess. So I'm gonna have to cope with it. But yeah, surely it'll be fine. I mean, I'm recording this anyway, so by the time that I load it up and post it, there won't be any delay on that. So other people seeing the recording hopefully won't be affected by it. But thanks for the concern. I will look into getting that fixed. But right now, I don't think there's much I can do about it. Okay. I will try and get on with the article now so that I'm not boring you with my technical difficulties. Like when I type, is taking 30 seconds as opposed to an active engagement. I'll bear with it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, okay. I'll look into see if I can fix it, but at least you can tell that there's a delay and that I'm not just ignoring you. So yeah. Oh well. Okay, I'll get on with it. Thank you for bearing with me. I'll do my best. Okay. Using the concept of pilgrimage to trace each parent's understandings and decisions helps us better understand the family's comprehensive and evolving experiences. To be clear, many people do not equate deafness with illness, including me and most participants in the study, at least by the time I met them. However, the literature on treatment seeking and sick roles is applicable to the study because the journeys the families described are shaped largely by deficit models and medicalized paradigms that closely align deafness with impairment, disability, and concepts of a sick or broken child of need of a cure. From the UK, no, I'm not. My accent is just British. I'm actually from New Zealand. It's like 7 p.m. here, so it's late-ish, but it's fine. I don't sound like I'm from New Zealand, but I think it's just because I watched too much British TV growing up. It is what it is. Yeah, I often get asked by people of like my own country where I've come from, and I'm like, I was born and raised here. Please understand. Okay, continuing. Participants use the term peregrination, resonated with anthropology and religious studies and literature on pilgrimage. A pilgrimage is an analytical tool that's not typically the focus of medical anthropologists. Many students recognize the role of religious pilgrimage among cure seekers in an array of contexts. Examples include Erhorn's 1994. I think you might be getting us confused with Australia. Australia has huntsmen. I don't think we do. I think the only poisonous spider we have might be like either a black widow or a whitetail. No, we're not a portion of Australia, but people do get confused with that sort of thing. Most of our wildlife are birds. We actually don't have any native mammals aside from bats. So, yeah. In terms of insects, we do have a lot of native weta and crickets and that sort of thing. But no, Australia is the one with the wax spiders. Yeah, it's okay. People don't really know a lot about us. We're sometimes brought up in international media, but not too often. Like, it's fine if you don't know. I don't really expect you to. Okay. It's not typically the focus of medical anthropologists. Many studies of just pilgrimage seek cures. Okay, influential infography on Egyptian infertility. Okay, so they're just going through a bunch of different studies at the moment. Bats and Edo. Yes, they really are. They're so cute. I mean, yeah. Yeah, fruit bats are so big. I never realized that they were that big. I don't know. I sort of grew up with the understanding that they were quite small. I think we also used to have a native mouse a while ago, but it went extinct. But I guess that's what you get for living in a nation of birds. There's not much they could do about it. Okay. My focus is on pilgrimage as a social endeavor that was fundamentally transformative for families, of an oft-quoted characterization by Turner, 1969. Do you like your field of work? I mean, it's a field of just studying. Yes, I find it incredibly interesting. I think taking a more social view towards health is a better way of understanding it rather than more of a biomedical point of view. I do study the biomedical aspect of it in terms of like bodily function and that sort of thing, but I think viewing well-being in general from a holistic perspective is the most beneficial for society in general, because it allows us to to take into account some metaphysical aspects of well-being, like your spiritual and mental sides of things, because all of them are very important, but a lot of people don't really see it that way. Yeah, I think the last section that I looked into was looking at comparing how people tell their stories of health and well-being to be very interesting, like the way that people structure it. can be very rewarding and enriching. Yes, it is. It is very rewarding and enriching to learn about new perspectives on health and how people in different cultures define it and that sort of thing. Especially since there's so many traditional forms of medicine and therapy which work very well, and adopting them into our own understanding of health and therapeutic treatment could be greatly beneficial to society in general. But because of like racism and cultural differences, it's kind of hard to incorporate it and for people to take full advantage of it, especially since we think most things that have a scientific basis are reliable, but we don't really think about the side effects or the fact that most of the time it doesn't take into account like mental state. Thank you. And thank you. I like to think that I'm passionate about the subject in which I'm studying. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are more qualified than I am. I like to think that I can speak well, which is why I had the idea to do a stream like this in the first place. But yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying this. I hope that I don't butcher the article too much. I had been practicing reading other things, like for my two previous streams, I've been trying to do a novel reading. So I've been going through the Book Thief. I'm about like a fifth through. Always learning something new. Yeah, of course. I mean, anything that comes your way in a field, like, yeah, it's a great aspect of it. It really is. Yeah, learning anything new from any aspect of it, there's always new things being discovered because everybody has a unique perspective on something. And researching in a subject in which is based on perspective means that you're not limited to the number of things that you can learn, because everyone has their own sort of unique life experiences and perspectives which they can convey based on their age, culture, religion, how much trauma they've experienced, their connection with nature. It's all very different for each individual person. And so when people are able to like convey their thoughts and feelings in a informative manner, it's very interesting. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to continue reading this. Turner reminds us that pilgrimage can be described as a process of going to a far place to understand a familiar place better. During their quests for support in Mexico's medical system and beyond, families sought counsel with strangers to help them do something fundamentally personal, communicate with and socialize with their children. This process involved simultaneously enacting and reinterpreting and redesigning what it meant to be a parent of a deaf child. Importantly, the relationship toward medical authority as it related to family decisions and socialization, and their orientation towards deafness, disability, and language, shifted during these voyages. This finding follows Innate and Anselmo's 2000 quote point that pilgrimage is a social vehicle for negotiating meaning and power. Thus, I insinuate this analysis to engage Coleman's 2002 point. Call and is called to expand the concept of pilgrimage to other infographic endeavors, and to engage Clifford's notion of pilgrimage to contextualize human participation in the word that is constantly en route. Hello? I am not your mother. Okay. Okay, so in case like that bit was a bit confusing, it's just referencing a bunch of different people in the field and talking about their perspective and fighting for the word pilgrimage or journey to like be expanded to different definitions and for it to have a more metaphorical and diverse meaning to be used in other contexts and that sort of thing. So yeah, and sort of people who investigate Lourdes and France as a healing place and that sort of thing. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next one. Mm. Finally, families participants' independent use of the terms pilgrimage and pilgrims as they reflected upon the authored and their support-seeking narratives evidences the influence of pilgrimage in Mexican consciousness. Pilgrimage is a concept intimately woven into Mexican historical and cultural tapestry, with a long-standing tradition. It was a foundational part of pre-contact indigenous cultures during the Spanish colonization. In modern-day Mexican cities and towns, festivities honoring patron saints and processions and fireworks are common throughout the year. The most illustrious by far is an annual pilgrimage to the Basilica de la Virgen de Guadalupe in northern Mexico City, which receives over 20 million tourists and pilgrims per year. During this week, December 12th, swarms of pilgrims throughout the Mexican Republic descend upon the city. Pilgrims arrive most notably in sparkling half-ton pickups and adorned with colorful garlands, flowers, an iconic image of Mexico's most celebrated patron saint. Thousands more, including some participants I interviewed, arrive by bus, metro, and personal vehicles until they are close enough to walk the final kilometers to the Virgin's shrine, many on their knees. The path of these urban pilgrims cannot be ignored. Traffic slows for a grind for days on end. Street vendors sell all manner of virgin-related paraphernalia, piercing shoots, startling bomb-like fireworks, shoot into the heavens around the clock in honor of the Sacred Lady of Guadalupe. Most participants mention spirituality or faith in some form during these interviews. Yet the pilgrimages they described were mostly what we described as secular journeys. Although emphasis on the sacred or divine is not a defining part in the way of the pilgrimage is used here by participants or by me, the notion of a spectrum between secularism and I can't speak. Okay. And religiosity. There we go. Sorry, give me a second. Okay. Okay, that was nothing. I will continue on with what I was saying. Okay. The notion of a spectrum. Okay, it's also helpful context. Okay, I think it was me, sorry. I'll be back in a second. Hello. Thank you. Do you want the Red Bull? Sorry? You want the Red Bull? Oh, thank you. Green or normal? Is there the green one? Yeah, thank you. Okay, have a nice day. Sorry about that. Somebody just offering me a Red Bull. Okay, where was I? It's also helpful in the context of Mexico City, where pilgrimage has a particular. The readings are relaxing. Oh, thank you. That's kind of the reason why I decided to start the readings in the first place, because I know a lot of people struggle with reading, especially with reading academic material and long novels, and ebooks tend to be quite pricey and inaccessible. Oh, that's really good. Oh well, maybe it was just my Wi-Fi or like people taking it or something like that. I don't know. Oh well. Lots of people are coming into the mess, but a few probably will. No, I don't think so. If you're referring to the person that was at my door, it was just a friend of me friend of mine offering me a Red Bull. Um, I don't know. Or do you mean like people trying to steal my Wi-Fi? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm glad that it's fixed itself and that you can interact with me properly. Yeah. I'm not a MILF. I don't know why. I don't know why that's something that they would refer to me as. I don't know. Internet culture's weird, man. I'm not a mum of any sort. I don't think I look like a MILF. I don't know. Is it the British accent? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I know. I know. I know that there's a towel on it. Uh, keep thinking that you're in the bathroom, but you're not. Yeah, I know. I'm not in the bathroom. I don't know why the rooms come with a towel holder. I don't know. It's kind of convenient to have in your bedroom, just to have one. I can take the towel off if that helps. Yeah, it should yeah, it should be installed. I don't know. It's kind of handy to hang like wet clothes on and stuff as well. Put it in the bedroom, not the bathroom. It's okay. There's one in the bathroom as well. That's for the actual towels. This one is just one that I bring like in between the towel and the bedroom. Yeah, I can take the towel off the rail if that makes it any better. Yup. Shelves allowed. I have shelves, just towel holders. I don't know. They're pretty convenient. I have shelves. Look, I got shelves. It's fine. I have a shelf and a closet. It's okay. I can cope. It's fine. uh, I mean, if you want something really weird, I just have a salt shaker here. Off-camera shelving. Yeah. The stream is progressing now. Okay. Oh, salt shaker. Yeah, I just have one in my room because like it's kind of useful, I guess. Because when you get like mouth ulcers and stuff, like you gargle salt water. So I just chuck this in a drink bottle and gargle for a bit. Usually solves the problem. What's good? Oh, hello. To ward off the spirits, yes, because I am a witch. Ah. What's good? Things are great, my man. I was just doing an academic reading, but I was showing the other viewer. I'm sorry, I don't want to pronounce your name, it's so long. My salt shaker, which I have in my room, coincidentally. Okay. Jay Weiss is from New Zealand. Yes, I guess so. I don't know of that person. I can look them up. Oh, you're a witch? I'm not. I made a joke. I keep salt in my room just to like help with mouth ulcers and stuff because that happens sometimes. Yeah, he's the leader of the Bullet Club. Oh, I don't think I've heard of that before. I'll look it up really quickly just so I can like properly converse with you. Mhm. The Bullet Club. Yo, your stream title, what the fuck? Yeah, it's long. It's because I'm doing an academic reading. It's very long. That makes sense. That's why we're trending on the end. Ah, okay. Academically. Yeah, academic readings, boy. Uh, okay. Oh, yeah, I have heard of that dude, I think. Okay. Yeah, my stream title's a bit whack, but it's just because it's the type of the article I'm reading, guys. Just let me read about deaf families in Mexico trying to learn sign language, guys. I'm talking about pilgrimage and health benefits and comparing like your well-being and transition to healthiness as a journey, It's got to be like that. Okay. I'll try and get on with it. Okay. Where was I? I think I've completely lost where I am. Okay. Why doesn't everyone use one sign language? Oh, it's just because each individual language has like their own sort of nuances and stuff, and their own individual words, which sometimes are untranslatable. Not to mention, because some words would be easier to translate, and some words have different nuanced meanings and everything like that. Like in my country alone, we have two types of sign language. We have New Zealand Sign Language, and we have Te Reo Sign Language, which is with our indigenous language. I don't know. It's kind of nice having such a diverse range of different sign languages, especially since different cultures are going to use different gestures for different things and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not an expert on sign language, but I'm going to assume that's what it's for, especially since people will be learning or like learning sign language at different points in time in different countries and that sort of thing. ASL, yeah, you have American Sign Language as well. I think most countries have their own form of like sign language, whether that's English Sign Language, American Sign Language. For my country personally, it's New Zealand Sign Language, because everyone uses different gestures and slightly different forms for things, so it's just like it's a nuanced thing, I guess. Yeah, it would be convenient if everyone used the same sign language, but that doesn't take into account culture and the richness of it. Yeah, I mean, you can always like pick up a few terms and stuff, because I think universally like hello is about the same, and thank you and that sort of thing. Although that might be different between cultures as well, because everyone's form of gratitude is different, and sorry and that sort of thing. Yeah, you can always pick up ASL or pick up a few terms. There's no need to rush it, but you can take your time with whatever you want. You can pick up any language that you desire. All you have to do is like commit and try your best. And if anyone makes fun of you for learning a different language, they're a bit of a cuck, so maybe don't listen to them. Okay. 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 Indeed, many participants described the transformations they saw in the children as incredible, miraculous, and life-changing as they began to learn sign language among deaf peers and teachers at the Institute. Their otherworldly descriptions hearken the never-distant mysticism of divine revelation and transformation through pilgrimage. Okay, the next paragraph, because we finally got into it, is pilgrimage in response to the predicament of deafness. A lot of these paragraphs seem to have very similar titles, so it's kind of hard to distinguish what specific points they're making, which are different from the others. I'm not entirely sure, but that's fine. Okay. The vast majority of deaf children, upwards of 90%, are born into hearing families. The birth of a deaf child creates a situation for which nothing can prepare hearing families with no experience with deafness most of the time. For more than 30 Mexican hearing parents I interviewed in 2012 and 2018, described the journey of a child's deafness as unanticipated and often quite shocking or stressful. Circumstance: following the diagnosis, hearing parents in the study experienced liminality, characterized as an ambiguous and indeterminate. In other words, they found that they and their children eluded or slipped through the network of classifications that normally were located states and positions of cultural space. Okay, that's a little hard to read because it's using a lot of academic language, so I'm just going to move on from that. And here's a little quote from one of the participants in the study. No, well, the doctors told us she was deaf. And it was like, geez, we weren't even sure about anything. We didn't have any family, nothing. I mean, it was like another world. At first, I was just in shock, but really, it was a different process at all. It was a difficult process. It was difficult to process at all. Okay, sorry. Neurons, or the participant which I just quoted, describing the feeling that she was in another world, illustrates how parents intuited that a deaf child has the potential to create social distance between their family and predominantly hearing mainstream or general society. Many families spoke about courtesy stigma, the idea of contagious nature of stigma to those associated with the stigmatized individual, in this case a deaf child. Francesca described a similar kind of disorientation following her daughter's diagnosis, when she said, "For me, it was as though she wouldn't be able to move forward. I believed it as though she wouldn't be able to be independent. I asked, 'That was your fear?' It was my concern. What will I do? I had anxiety about what to do, anxiety about what would happen." The ubiquitous issue of communication created a sense of urgency that prompted hearing families to seek outside consultation and advice. While hearing children of hearing parents and deaf children of signing parents are naturally exposed to their families' languages, these families looked beyond their families for assistance in establishing a shared mode of communication. Alberta, who has 2 deaf sons, said, I didn't know what a deaf person was, and I asked myself, what will become of my son when he grows up? How will I give him things? How will he do things? How will he go to school? How will he understand me? This was really difficult for me. Sorry, is that my phone popping off? I can't tell. Go away. Okay. I recognize that many cultural frameworks for understanding deafness oppose viewing deafness as a disability, as in the US, UK, and elsewhere. Many scholars and activists actively work towards this association, and these efforts are increasingly reaching influencing mixed and deaf communities. I tend towards Shakespeare's interactional relational understanding of disability, recognizing that disability results from the interplay of individual contextual factors. In other words, people are disabled by society and by their bodies. Emphasis on the original. It's important. Turning pages is the most difficult part of reading, I swear. It is important to explicitly point out why in this article I align deafness closely with disability. Deafness equals disability was the takeaway for parents in most medical contexts, and this was the understanding from which parents initially operated, characterizing deafness as the unseen or unnoticed disability. Many parents told me that they wished their child's deafness were categorized more rigidly and specifically as a disability so they could receive disability benefits and associated economic assistance. Parents concerned align with my own view that disavowing deafness as a disability can potentially weaken collective or personal resolve and positioning to advocate the specific needs of deaf individuals. Shakespeare uses the concept of the predicament or impairment to capture the complexities of impairment, or the intrinsic difficulties of engaging with the world. By casting impairment as a trying situation, he reframes what he calls the inescapable emphasis of tragedy and predicament of deafness. Useful for framing and trying uncomfortable situations in which participants founded themselves upon their deaf children's diagnosis. Furthermore, the imagery of a person facing a predicament also invokes the need to do something in response to the uncomfortable circumstances. Tailored from a viewpoint of broader socio-political philosophy, describes the predicament as new principles of sociality in which people are expelled from old forms before they can find their way in new structures or find new viable social imaginaries. I propose that the predicament of deafness, paired with a scarcity of immediate resources for adequately understanding the predicament, were the impetus for the pilgrimages of hearing families of Mexican deaf children. Okay, so that's a very interesting point to make, where people often make the point that labeling something as a disability can come with a lot of social stigma, but also recognizing that these individuals' ability is impaired by something physical or they have little to no control over is something that we need to support and allow them to engage in society to a more fundamental degree, because they need to be able to live as comfortably as possible. And if you look at it from like a societal perspective, so they're able to contribute and pursue what they want to do to the greatest degree. So you sort of have to diminish social stigma at the same time as offering support to individuals who need it. Okay. Where am I? Furthermore, okay. Jackie L. Scully, a feminist bioethicist who describes herself as unchangeably as deaf, and some with a hearing impairment, reminds us that disabled people generally have to learn to be disabled, often without anyone knowing around to show us how. I argue that a similar phenomenon takes place for hearing parents as they discover their children are deaf. Participants who specifically link their acquaintances' family with deaf issues with feeling of uncertainty and isolation are compelled to search for others to show them how to be parents of deaf children. The difficult, at times, anxiety and confusion participants describe were in large part a result of having countless troubling questions about her form without a forum in which to present them. As they recalled their most memorable anxieties, parents often narrated themselves as questions that went unanswered. How will he be able to understand me? What will I do? Many participants used rhetorical questioning in interviews specifically to convey the helplessness they felt at the time, when they knew little about deafness and could not imagine where or whom they might turn to. Families' initial response to the predicament of their children's deafness was to turn Mexican and public health services or similar medical settings. Thus, medical perspectives were primarily early resources for information about deafness, and nearly all hearing family members I interviewed described multiple iterations within the Mexican public health system. Hearing parents described interactions that ranged from useful to benign to traumatic. Angel described a particularly distressing interaction with the medical personnel he referred to later as trauma, and the doctors as an animal. Angel recounted details surrounding his wife's experience at the largest national clinic dedicated to speech and hearing issues. Here he recalls the day his wife learned of their son's deafness for the first time. Okay, so this might be a little bit, yeah. Hey, I'm shaking. Huh? Something is. Guess what you're shaking? I don't know. Is it salt, perhaps? Is it a salt shaker? Sorry, that was too good of an opportunity to pass up. Okay. Okay, I was about to say, if you guess right, I'll give you a $10 donation. I'm not very interested, but I already. What are you shaking? Something that you can shake. My mind is drawing a blank. Is it perhaps a milkshake? That is my guess. I'm sorry. You can tell me what you were shaking before I read this next part, because it It might describe something that was traumatic for someone, so it's quite a serious topic. So, do you want to say what you're shaking before I get on with it? You have three chances. No, please. I want to keep reading. Ah. What can even people shake? Your ass? I don't fucking know. Um. Okay, my guesses are salt, a milkshake, and/or your ass. Those are my guesses. Please tell me that I'm wrong, please. It's okay. Okay, I'm gonna get on with the reading. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong or not. This next part may be triggering. I'm at the gym. Is it a shake weight? Are you shaking a shake weight? This is a hint. Um, what are you shaking at the gym? I don't know what you could possibly be shaking. Okay, you lose. Thank you. What were you shaking? Please tell me. The protein shake. I said milkshake. I was pretty close. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving on anyway. When my wife arrives, she tells me she took a seat. The doctor stopped in front of her and said, I don't want shrieking. I don't want any ridiculousness. Your son is deaf. And man, just like that, he said it. And when the doctor said, I don't want you to be overly dramatic with me, I've had it up to here with old shrill whiners. Your son is deaf and we have to see how to move forward. No, can you imagine my wife's reaction? First I tell her all of a sudden, just like that, your son is deaf. She was shocked and became upset. Sorry, I'm reading an article about deafness. If you looked at the title of my stream, I am reading an academic article on deaf families, treatment and pilgrimage in, childhood deafness and learning how to communicate with their children and that sort of thing, and their experiences with the health sector in Mexico. And I just read somebody's experience with finding out that their son is in fact deaf. Their doctor told them not to be overly dramatic. Wonderful. You're a gold-hearted girl. Well, thank you. Much appreciated. Cool, I guess. I will move on. If you have any questions, shoot away. If you want to say something, I'll probably reply to it, I guess. Okay, moving on. Angel's narrative was even more abrasive in Spanish because they had no direct English translation for some of the phrases he used. Okay, I'm about to say something in Spanish. I'm going to butcher it very badly. Please forgive me. I will try my best. He told me the doctor said, no quiero chilido ni quiero queja pendejidas, derived from the word pendejido, which translates to asshole or shithead. Pendejidas in a vulgar term. Angel reiterated the doctor used inappropriate and vulgar language with his wife by affirming him that he said una grosera or vulgarity, similarity, estoy hasta la madre de vellas chilenoyas, which is much more vulgar in Spanish than an English translation conveys. Okay, so essentially a doctor, one, told her that her son was deaf and cussed her out because she might have potentially been upset by the fact that she found out that her son was deaf. This fucking doctor, man. This doctor's like on another plane of existence. I don't even want to know what he was on when he said that shit. But it was something. It was definitely something. Granted, this would have likely been offensive and inappropriate in most cultural contexts, but in Mexican society is often characterized as overtly formal and polite characteristics generally visible in the existence of elaborate registers and obsequious attentiveness and respect. Angel's disconcerting narrative also reveals the collision between medical professionals and parents who together, through reactive and emotional language, enact the predictable tragedy trope on the clinical stage. Angel later discovered that his son's hearing loss was attributed to the antibiotic gentamicin, which was prescribed to treat a childhood infection. Oh, so he wasn't even born with it, Jesus. Angel and his wife were never warned of the known risks associated with this drug, and thus, around the age of 3, their previously hearing son was profoundly deafened. Several other participants mentioned the ototoxic drugs were believed to be the cause of childhood deafness in their families. Dang, people gotta get their drugs tested properly, bruh. Oh no. That's terrible. So it's not even genetic, it's... Oh. That's not great. No. 2 of 39 surveyed respondents specifically wrote medical negligence as deaf entomology, while 18 of 19 respondents claimed that they did not know the cause of deafness, considering these collective representations of experience within the public medical system. Perhaps Angel said it best, that now you see that you cannot trust anyone, not anymore. So I guess that's another thing to take into consideration about the Mexican health system, that in comparison to more wealthier countries, it's underfunded and more likely to promote riskier products and medications that could potentially cause terrible side effects like this. So that's why it's so important to talk about deafness and disability in a cultural context, because then you're able to understand the type of society that they're living in and how that can impact on the way that, you know, they're able to live with this disability, or even, you know, how it's caused in this specific situation. Wow. That is terrible. Okay. Participants often attributed the quality of their experience to individual doctors and speech therapists who attended to them. Not all were traumatic, and some were more pleasant and productive than others. However, all participants felt frustrated, annoyed, or even defeated by the bureaucracy of the institution. Many felt dismissed or aimlessly sent here and there. However, until parents discovered a better option, they felt there was little choice but to return to these institutions, because so little services for deaf children were accessible, even in Mexico City, the nation's cosmopolitan capital. Huh. Bruh. That is nutty. Yeah. The readings continue. Yeah, we forage on, baby. Heck yeah. Yeah, that's fucking insane. Bruh. Yeah, so this is my first time reading this article as well, in case you don't know. Yeah, you, like, I guess it's like a lullaby for my American self. Oh, yes, listening to the trauma of parents with deaf children as they explain how poorly they're treated by their health system is a beautiful lullaby for you. I respect that. Oh, this is absolutely terrible. Bruh. No. Yeah, like, yeah, whenever you think about how countries which, you know, aren't able to provide as good services as others, they're too sweet. Oh, thank you. I guess. I don't know. Like, you can't really think of any specific examples of like how people in these countries are affected by the fact that their country may not be able to afford research or proper health care until you like are visited with specific examples like this, and the fact that they are causing a large group of children to go deaf because of an antibiotic they're prescribing them it's insane. It's absolutely nuts. Bruh. Ah. Okay. I'm gonna keep reading. Hopefully, my, indeed. Indeed. Mexico's medicalized approach influenced people to understand deafness as a deficit of hearing and especially the ability to speak, and a deviation from normalized hearing standards. Deficit and deviance are most often associated with disability, and as participants' experiences illustrate, an abnormal condition expected to leave parents upset and in shock upon its discovery. In lieu of guidance and direction parents expected to receive, they were denounced. Thus, during these initial consultations, parents' condition became one of ambiguity and paradox, a confusion of all customary categories. Fucking pharmaceuticals, yeah, down with Big Pharma, and I guess Small Pharma as well for providing these fucking horrendous antibiotics. So bad, so terrible. Yeah, that isn't great. Like, imagine you're thrown into a circumstance. Yeah, it's so strange here in the USA. Yeah, I don't know much about how it is. Got commercials for medications galore. I think actually, legally speaking, the US and New Zealand are the only countries, like, or at least some of the only first world countries, which allow supplement and medication advertisements. Like, we still have them here, which is kind of unusual. Contact our lawyers if you have any issues with our medicine. Sorry, you've gone blind. Oopsies. You should have read the fine print. Haha. Too bad. You've got physical impairment? Well, we've got your money. Haha. Yeah, I don't know much about the American healthcare system, but from what I've heard about it from a distance, yeah, they get the magnifying glass out, just in that, in that -1 font right at the end there, the one which isn't in bold, unlike all the benefits, that are up here on the top. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I don't think our health system is that great either. Privatized junk, yeah. I take it it's very expensive. Like in New Zealand, generally, we have something called the public healthcare system and the private healthcare system. The public healthcare system is generally free, but the waiting list is so long that most people have to resort to private options, so it doesn't really make that much difference anyway. But at least we provide free options to people, especially children. So that's good. And even in Wellington and some other parts of New Zealand, we have free ambulances and that sort of thing. So that's good. But because our healthcare is like underfunded, the waiting lists are enormous, it's very inefficient. We have a lot to learn from other countries which may do it better. Yeah, it's absurd. I've seen hospital reports posted that they charged somebody $500 for a Band-Aid. Wow, that is nutty. Yeah, I've heard stuff like this, like someone's like sprained their pinky or something, and they have to like pay $2,000 for it or something because they're like, oh look, the nurse gave you a biscuit. That biscuit was worth $10, you see, so we're gonna have to add that onto your bill, guys. New Zealand is civilized, it seems. I mean, to an extent, our healthcare system is not perfect in any way. It's still it still needs a lot of improvement, but and at least we provide free options. Yeah, to an extent. I think every healthcare system is flawed in some way. It is the way that it is. But I think each healthcare system can learn something from each other's and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people go to America for specific operations. It's because stuff is highly funded and like they have more like state of the art stuff. We also have that down here, but it doesn't, come to us first. It often goes to America or Britain first. So in terms of getting experimentary or state of the art treatment, going to America or the UK is probably your best option. But in terms of like standardized healthcare, we're pretty good. Yeah, so I think each healthcare system has its flaws and benefits, some more obvious than others. But I guess, yeah, I mean, everyone's got something to learn from someone, right? Everyone's got a different perspective. And I guess in this instance, it's pretty fucking bad in Mexico. Just, taking away your ability to hear. Oh, thank you. Um, thank you for. Oh, it's a fake dono. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Why do those exist? Is okay. Thank you for telling me that that was fake. I did have someone earlier on in the stream donate $5, but it was kind of a weird interaction. Like they asked if they could be a mod, despite the fact that this is obviously like an amateur stream, and that they wanted me to call them king. So that was weird. Yeah, they got emoted. Ah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just vibing here, you know. I'm just trying to say things. I mean, I find it very interesting. I mean, it's an interesting thing, you know. It's an experience which I have to go to, being the way that I am. So might as well gain experience from it, so I'm able to handle it better in the future. So you know, it is. It is what it is. Well, I'm glad that I get to talk to you at least. You seem to be a very civilized individual. That's very funny things to say, and I appreciate that. Um, okay. I forgot where I was, so I'm gonna have to find that again. Um, okay, yeah, yep. Okay. Just part of the journey of life, yeah. Yeah, it's all good. What idiots and we're everywhere, unfortunately. Yeah, it is the way it is. Yeah. Well, and I don't think I can really fault them for it either. A lot of people just sort of brought up that way into thinking certain things, and they're sort of placed into an echo chamber with people that are just yes men who agree with them on everything. And you can easily see how they turn out the way that they do, and the fact that every interaction is transactional to them, and they have to get something from it, and that, yeah, it's needing a bit of creative outlet for their frustrations and anger. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like to hang out with people that tend to agree with them and their own political ideologies, because having positive interactions with individuals are generally what we crave. You know, we crave what's the word? We crave to be acknowledged by others and for people to say that we're good, that we're right, and everything like that. But in reality, sometimes you need a little tap on the head every now and then, just for people to say, hey, that's not a great attitude to have. Recognition, validation. Yeah, thank you. Those are even better words. Nice. Thank you. Um, yeah, people crave that sort of thing. Even though that might not be necessarily what makes you a better person, it certainly makes you a happier person most of the time. So, yeah, it be what it be. And that's sort of like a portion of the thing that I'm studying at the moment. The fact that previously I looked into how people describe themselves and their stories of sickness in like different categories. Like for example, we have the category of restitutional stories, which you know you'll hear everywhere. Like, oh, I was well one day, then I was sick another, but I will be well again, kind of thing. Like, oh, I am cured, I am good, I'm back to the way that things were. Your human behavior patterns. Yeah, it is an interesting thing to study. Like you like, oh, it's great now. I'm back to where I was. This is incredible. Yeah, emotional intelligence is a great thing to have. And a lot of people also like hearing stories where it's like, yes, medicine has won over illness. We're doing such a great job, guys. Oh, look, this person was struggling, but they're better now. That's great. We want to hear positive things. We want to hear that what we're doing is working. But that isn't necessarily always the case. And most of the time, restitutional stories don't take into account a lot of things. Like, I wrote notes. I'll bring out my notes. They're going to be useful. Okay. Did I say it at the start? Yeah, restitutional story doesn't take into account that being ill changes you. It changes your perspective on life. It changes you as a person. About time I had a decent interaction the one time I got one titch in a while. Oh, yeah. Yeah, nice having like good convers. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the conversation as well. It's very nice. Yeah, being able to go through my academic material while talking to somebody about it. It's kind of hard to find people that are talking about the same thing because most people who take this subject alongside me don't really like it that much because they take it in conjunction with like other academic papers. Also, dark green is your face. Ah, you mean like the top? Yeah, it's very nice. I like it. It's sort of like, but it's very cropped. Makes me want to hike. Yeah, yeah. Forest green is also my favorite color. It's very nice. It's very calming. The place that I'm living in at the moment, I can see some forests and I can go hiking, but it's like it's sort of out of the way. I'm in a very urban setting, but I don't know. It is what it is. Yeah. And as I was going to say before, like you have people who expect restitutional stories and like great things and positive things from other people. And then you have not so good stories, like for example, chaos stories as they're described. Yeah, they're a great. We're sort of known for being the green country. Like we have a lot of nature reserves and general hikes all over the place. Sorry to get off topic. No, it's okay. Yeah, we're sort of known for our walks and that sort of thing because we were quite a new discovered country. Like I think we were only discovered in like the 1870s, maybe. At least that was when we were colonized. Sorry about that. Whereas like the indigenous or like native people of the land sort of arrived in New Zealand 300 years or so prior to that. So yeah, and our land is quite fresh. So yeah, new on the chopping block. We got a lot of untarnished stuff, but we also have a lot of tarnished stuff as well. Like we used to have the largest bird ever, called the Haasvogel, which was the biggest bird in the world. It was humongous. It hunted birds the size of ostriches or even larger, which also lived in New Zealand. We had these ginormous, almost Jurassic-like birds that used to live here, and they went. Yeah, it is a nice country. Yeah, the people here are generally nice. We have our own issues like most countries, but I generally like living here, but the living cost is very high, so that's kind of sad, especially as a broke student like myself. Okay, thank you for the convo. I'll read a little bit more, and I'll respond to anything that you send my way. Yeah, so we were just talking about like the struggles that parents went through. Participants described a relentless focus on medical intervention during the time that they spent in the Mexican public healthcare system. Oh, hello. Oh, you followed. Thank you. That's very nice. Participants, medical personnel promoted a sound amplification apparatus, i.e. hearing aids or cochlear implants, and speech therapy, the only reasonable options for deaf children. Many doctors told parents to avoid sign language completely, that if their children learned sign language, they would never learn to speak. I thought I followed earlier, well now I am. Cool. Oh, the last time somebody followed me, it frightened me because the sound was way louder than I expected it to be. So that was kind of funny. I'm glad this one didn't frighten me this time, so that's good. um, okay, that's kind of mean. Like, don't teach your child to communicate with you, because they won't learn how to communicate in this thing which they can barely hear you doing. Cool. Like, hearing aids and cochlear implants are all well and good, but it doesn't fix the problem entirely. Especially if things go awry and they stop working for any particular reason, they wouldn't be able to communicate with anybody, especially since sign language is the best way they can communicate with others. Especially if it's within your own family, that should be fine. I mean, I understand like doing speech therapy and teaching them how to speak English or like Spanish. Brain fart, Spanish in this particular context is important. I understand that, but discouraging people from learning sign language is also not the way to go about it. Okay. Claudia said, well, you see, in the hospital, doctors tell you that you shouldn't teach them sign language. They have to speak. It's the same thing with the therapies at the children's hospital. At least that's what they always told me. So because of that, he was in therapy for many years. I didn't see that he was advancing at all. Surprise, surprise, speech therapy doesn't work on people that can barely hear what you are saying. Yeah. Fun, fun, fun. You know, it'll help. It'll definitely help, despite the fact that he hasn't made any progress in several years. Yeah, it's helping. Sure. Okay. Speech therapy, or oralisation. That sounded very French. I apologize. I wouldn't know how to pronounce this in Spanish. Or oralisation in Mexico is a general part of the oralist therapeutic approach to deafness in Mexico City. Do you enjoy gardening? It is so relaxing. I can't really garden at the moment because I don't really have any outdoor space where I am. But yeah, I really enjoy planting edible plants and that sort of thing because they're very fun and you can reap the benefits of your hard work and that sort of thing. Yeah, but I also enjoy flowers. They're very nice to look at and smell. But I generally live near botanical gardens, so I can visit greenery whenever I like and that sort of thing. I really enjoyed growing herbs where I previously lived. That was very nice, and I got to use them in my cooking, so that was very good. Yeah, gardening is very fun. I have friends that are very much into it. Anyway, like Angel, many parents were enticed by the false premise that deaf could also be cured or fixed through biomedical interventions, technologies, and rehabilitation. However, these interventions were expensive, individual outcomes varied widely, and there is no cure for deafness. Angel surmised his evolving understanding of deafness and disability when he said, I feel you're similar to me, not crazy outdoor activities. I don't know, I enjoy team sports as well. I watched a friend's volleyball match today. That was very nice. I do track and field. I like throwing discuses. That's very fun. Shot puts, sprints, that sort of thing. I do weightlifting and martial arts. That's a bit out there. I'm a bit quirky that way, you know. It's very fun punching things. It's very therapeutic when you're angry. Yeah, but I guess I am introverted at heart, so it's very nice to just sit and be calm and mindful about what you're doing and that sort of thing. You know, it is very nice. Oh, martial arts? Yeah, I'm a black belt in karate. It's very nice. I was a very angry child, hence why I did it, or why I started it in the first place. Jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai for me. Taekwondo when I was a kid. Yeah, I've always wanted to look into Taekwondo because it's really fun to look at because the fucking acrobatic kicks in Taekwondo are fucking insane. They're really, really fun to watch. Just the amount of flexibility that you need in order to do Taekwondo is nuts, and I've always wanted to try it out. There are some complex techniques which I used in my martial art, Okinawa Go-Juru Karate, which is a very traditionalist form of the art, but yeah, no, nothing quite like Taekwondo. Jiu-jitsu is very fun. It is grappling, and it's a good mixture of grappling and striking, which is very good. Muay Thai, I've looked a bit into it, but not too much. Mostly what I've got for, is it Muay Thai or is it Muay Thai? I've only really seen it in written format, so I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but I've mostly seen it through media, and it looks very interesting. Yeah. It is very interesting. I very much enjoy martial arts. Stretching is key. Yeah, flexibility. Flexibility is where it's at. Stretching prevents injury. Yeah, ripping your hamstrings, baby. It be what it be. I remember my teacher ripped a hamstring once, and he couldn't do roundhouse kicks for months. It was kind of funny. He was like, I'm gonna show you how to do the kick, and then he did it very poorly. Yeah, it was sad, but it was really funny. I'm a very mean person, as you can see. Okay. Anyway, we're going back to what roundhouse kicks straight to the groin. That would be pretty hard, actually. Unless somebody was like tilting their groin to like the side with their legs separated, that would be difficult to do. When you just do like a front kick, like instead of a moshigiri, you'd do like a maigiri, or a flick kick would be like the most effective if you were going for the groin. But I mean, I guess you can try a roundhouse kick, but I don't think it would be very effective in that particular area. I meant to be going. Oh, a roundhouse straight to the ground. Oh, I meant okay. If he tore his hamstring, he met the ground immediately after. No, they just look very weak and pathetic. Like I'll do the spacing you so that you can see what I'm doing. But generally, his kicks would like instead of like having a full motion that went fully upwards, it would just sort of be like down here, so it would look like a shin kick or something like that. It wasn't very effective. Yeah, it would have doubled out. Yeah. So it was just a really shit kick. He couldn't do very well for a while, so it was funny having him teach us. Um. Okay, we're going back to what Angel is saying. Man with his deaf son. He summarized his evolving understanding of deafness and disability when he said, "At the time, I saw deafness as like an illness. I didn't understand that it was a characteristic of life, you know? I saw it as though he was sick, and of course I didn't want to view him as a sick child. But if only had explained to me earlier on the things I now understand, that deafness is not an illness, but instead it's just another way of being and not a deficit, but something natural, like being born French or Italian." When I first got into Maltai, I'd see those crazy vids of guys in Thailand strengthening their shins against tree trunks was wild. Yeah. In my martial art, we had the pole, which had like a rope wrapped around it, and you'd punch that until your knuckles went raw. And then eventually the skin would grow hard, so you could punch people without feeling anything. I think that was the point of the exercise. It's like rip all the skin off until you feel nothing. Haha. Punch until you bleed. It's sort of what I had to do. I also did knuckle press ups in variation, so that was fun. Okay. Instead it's just another way of being. A deficit is something natural, like for example your nationality. Okay. Moving on. You never lose your ability, you just lose your timing when it comes to martial arts as you age. I don't know. I mean, I see there are a lot of like older guys who have been doing martial arts their entire lives, and they're like really high level, and they can still do like combat and kata very very smoothly. Like their joints and stuff don't bother them in the same way they do with like regular movements. They're just, I guess if you keep moving throughout your life, it doesn't affect you too much, especially if you're doing something. Yeah, it's crisp. Old people doing martial arts, it's like, whoa, your joints are not dying from the inside. I wonder why that is. Yeah, they do take good care of themselves. It's very nice to see. But I also know that they could probably beat me up, so that's also kind of reassuring. Okay. Yeah, my throat is kind of dying, in case you can't notice, because I've been talking for ages. Okay. Bit of a smother. Hydrate or dihydrate, baby. Woo. Drink of legends water. Very true. It is essential for survival. Very good for you. I recommend you also drink water, especially since you've been sitting here for a while. Even just like existing costs a lot of water. Remember to replenish. Many families experience the disequilibrium associated with limitability, while in state-run institutions, as they are able to find helpfulness assistance for their children. No alcohol. Yes, alcohol? Maybe. Drink what you want to drink, man. I don't really care. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Hmm. Insufficient information about deafness, the stigmatized status of sign language in Mexico, and too few options for families with deaf children were factors that trapped these families in this betwixt and between stage as they trudged through one appointment to the next. Nonetheless, Angel and others recognized that they had few options beyond the public health institutions they mistrusted and knew of very few alternatives serving deaf children's linguistic needs. Alcohol for you, I mean. Good on you. That is very healthy and a good choice to have morally. I support you. But I am an alcoholic. Not really, but I enjoy like a good social drink every now and then. But good on you for not drinking. That's a good choice to make. I appreciate your healthy choices. I'm an alcoholic, baby. Yeah. Okay. And you have very little alternatives. He said, it's because of all this that I simply have no trust in the medical services here in Mexico. I mean, for me, it's despicable, but it's all we have. Alcoholic martial artist, baby. Yeah. Haven't you ever heard of Drunken Fist? It's a very effective fighting style, I must say so. I keep interrupting the progress, my bad. Yeah, it's fine. It's a good break every now and then. Because it usually takes a while to get into the meat of the article and like find it interesting to read because you have to get through all the academic language and all the introductions, but when you get to the heart of it, it's very interesting. Okay, moving on. He was saying before, the health system sucks and they don't trust it, that it's the only thing they have in order to help themselves communicate with their own children. Okay, most parents acted in accordance with culturally sanctioned norms to visit a doctor believing that medical professionals could cure or fix their children, even as they eventually realized those interventions had limited efficacy. In short, parents spent time, energy, and money seeking out solutions in medical context with little initial return on their investment. They hoped to enjoy progress with their deaf children, but many remained in periphery, not very good, of the solutions they sought out for months. Programs progress, yet they plodded on in spite of delays and obstacles. Like Bunyan and Owens states, protagonists, Christian, disillusioned by the medical and therapeutic context they found unattainable, parents soon realized that the medical approaches to deafness did not always facilitate social and scheduling among others. In order to journey on in search of answers and assistance, ultimately they held out hope for a more inhabitable world for themselves and their children, one that would be an alternative to make a mode to think about medical concepts of rehabilitation and habituation. I think I drink wine on special occasions. Might be the closest to an alcohol. Yeah, I mean, wine is an alcohol. In fact, even among my friends that drink a lot more than I do, like getting drunk on wine is one of their worst drunk experiences, even like among spirits and stuff like that. Apparently, getting drunk on wine is like different from getting drunk on RTDs and that sort of thing. So, I mean, if you only drink a glass or two, it doesn't get you that far, but I mean, I guess it's one of the more traditional forms, or like what people are most likely to be exposed to, especially religiously. Okay, moving on, we strive forward. We're on to the next paragraph, actually. It's called Community and Culturality in the IPPLAAP. It's a very long acronym for the society, which I can't remember what the acronym stood for. And I'm addressing something late. I'm introverted too, but I know how to be extroverted as well. I think that's called being an ambivert. That's somebody who's like in between. I'm sort of I default as like introverted overall. I can be social with other people. It just takes a lot of energy, which is sort of like its essence. It's not that I dislike being social with others. Yeah, all good. It's not that I don't like being social with others. It's more to do with the fact that I just find it very tiring, especially for extended periods of time. So, yeah. And I mean, talking like this is very interesting because it doesn't tire me out too much, especially since I'm used to talking to myself for extended periods. Gotta recharge, I feel that. Yeah, sometimes you just want to like ignore everybody for days on end. It'd be like that sometimes. I have a close circle of friends, not a big one. I don't know. My circle of friends just keeps on expanding, and I don't know how to make it stop expanding. It's kind of funny. I was used to having a very small circle initially, but it just keeps like every friend group that I get into just keeps getting bigger for some reason. I don't know. It's kind of nice. Yeah. I don't know how to make it stop, but it keeps getting bigger. I mean, it's kind of fun talking to new people every now and then, especially since they're introduced to more intimate settings again and again. So that's kind of nice. But you do run into people which are questionable every now and then, which is not so great. Okay. I might take a little break because my throat is killing me. Yeah, talking to people is very interesting. Completely agree. It is very much an occasional thing. I guess it's sort of like but usually international peeps are the most interesting. I don't know why. I think it might be because we just offer a different perspective. I don't know. Like you don't have the same small talk with somebody who lives in another country because they just have different experiences from you. And it's really fun to find out new things about stuff that you don't know about. So that could be an aspect of it. You're sick of your country? Oh, that's not good. I don't know what's going on specifically over there right now, but I do get news of you sometimes because you are a cultural influence. It'd be like that. It's kind of funny. Like we're just sitting over here in our little, because New Zealand's quite isolated from the rest of the world, geographically speaking. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, but the people can go. So many great national parks to visit here. Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a bear. I've always wanted to see a bear. They seem so nice. Our country doesn't really have any native mammals in general. Like I said before, we have bats, but that's about it. And we have imported animals, like we have sheep. You might have heard of the fact that we do have a lot of sheep. We have cows, like your basic farming animals. Yes, we do have deer, but that's because they were introduced by the British because they were like, yeah, we have to hunt something because we're rich and we have nothing better to do. So they released some deer into the mountains. And now we have a deer problem. Nice. Good old British. Yeah, it'd be like that. They were like, we're going to, send out some possums. We're going to send out some deer. It's going to be a good old time. But then they took over the entire ecosystem and now all of our native species are dying. They're influenced all over the world. Yeah, colonization, baby. Ooh. Ooh. What a swagger concept. Let's diminish cultural influence and force people to our way of life. It's beautiful. Let's enslave people for no apparent reason apart from the fact that it benefits us, baby. Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, colonization is interesting. A lot of people get very angry about it. I should be very angry about it. But if you choose to look at it from like a humorous perspective, I think that's sort of like it allows people to talk about it a bit better. I think there are very few countries around the world that haven't experienced colonization to some extent. Even the British people experienced it, hence Vikings and that kind of thing. So they experienced war and being taken over to some degree, but just not to the same degree that Spain and France and Britain did. Yeah, it becomes definitely something worth being angry over in regards. Yeah, Yeah, colonization bad generally. It's not a great thing. But, part of living is being able to accept reality and work with what you've got to make life better for the people around you. Yeah. Which is sort of which is the point of me reading this article, to express and understand different elements of different cultures, struggles, and that sort of thing, so I can be more informed about things. Which is why it's good to understand health from many different cultural perspectives and that sort of thing. So, yeah. I think I might read. Oh, we're really close to actually finishing this. Yeah. We've got one more paragraph, and then we've got the conclusion. So we're almost done. Ooh, brilliant. Okay. Community and culturality in the institution. Full paragraph. Yeah, then conclusion. Yeah. Okay. Based on her own experiences as a hearing patient of a profoundly deaf child, anthropologist Professor Liang writes, hearing parents of deaf children fall somewhere between refugees forced to move and migrants with a vision for a better world. Liang, a New Zealander, one of my people? Oh, what a plot twist. A New Zealander with an anthropologist's sensibility and training intuitively recognized the importance of shared language with her deaf daughter. In use of migration, she references the movement toward a world where sign language was a central component of the response to the predicament of deafness. The participants in the study, however, came to the realization, through more painstaking and embodied paths, they learned through experience or learned the hard way that they could not depend on local methods or medical communities to guide them to an inhabitable world in which people could socialize and communicate with their deaf children. A wild New Zealander has appeared. That's what it's like every single time, like in the media where I see, what? Someone from my country is there? What is this madness? And it kind of thing, because it's really rare. They're like, oh, I'm from New Zealand actually, and I'm like, that was random. Why do you exist there? That makes no fucking sense. It's like, oh, we exist, yay! It's kind of the basis of my username actually, as Invisible Island, because I remember, I think it was back in 2016. I was talking to people and they pulled up this statistic, because back in 2016 New Zealand was even less well known than we are currently, like to the point that people just did not know who we were, and that 50% of Americans didn't know that New Zealand was a country, and a portion of them believed in the conspiracy theory that New Zealand doesn't exist. Because we don't appear on a lot of world maps, because we were discovered quite late on. Yeah. Yeah, so hence the name Invisible Island, because we are an island nation. 2 big islands, actually. Facepalm. Yeah, we don't exist apparently. That's fun. A lot of people also don't believe that Australia exists, despite the fact that it's a whole ass continent, but yeah, we don't appear on like half world maps, and even with like whenever we see like a globe around the place in the media, sometimes we're just not on it. We're like, I guess we don't exist. We're invisible. That's great. Ah. I just thought it was really funny in general, because it's like, whoa, my existence has been denied by the American government, baby. That's fun. Okay, I'm gonna continue. Well, when they give the diagnosis, I didn't know anything, so I felt alienated. And then they told me with hearing aids, the girls could reciprocate 80% of what I was saying. What a miracle! I mean, I was a person who didn't really know about these things, so of course I didn't realize that it wasn't true until so much time had passed. Like ridiculous flat earthers. Yeah, conspiracy theorists, baby. I don't know, they're really funny to me. I think it's just funnier to laugh at people instead of getting angry at them. Like, sure, do your thing, it is amusing, but sad too. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're happy in their own way, but when you get to the point where you're so deep in the echo chamber that you're not able to accept reality, it's like there's not much you can do about it. Yeah, it is kind of sad, but yeah, I mean, the only thing that we can do is listen to them, which I think is very contradictory. Like we can scream all we want at them about how they're wrong and that they shouldn't be saying these things and they're spreading misinformation. That if we just tell them that they're wrong without explaining why and being able to have an honest conversation with them, they're not going to be able to listen to us. Because a lot of them also view their beliefs as flat earthers from a scientific perspective. They think of themselves as scientists. So if we don't discuss with them like they are scientists about their theories and why they might be incorrect, they're not going to listen to us because we're treating them like they're children. When they're not children, they're just misinformed. Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of funny when they're like, wait, our experiment proved the Earth was round? Surely there was something. Like, I remember they bought this, things you go in the street. Number one, New Zealand does exist, yeah. Very educational, guys. New Zealanders are real, we do exist. A lot of them do look like me, but a lot of them don't. In terms of culture, we're very diverse. Like, a lot of us are white because colonization, baby. But a large portion of us are like refugees from other countries, and we also have our indigenous peoples, which are the Maori, and they possess our national language, also Maori, Te Reo Maori, and yeah, our culture is very rich, and it's quite similar to Samoan. Actually, there's a lot of similarities to Hawaiian culture with Te Reo Maori, and because they share a lot of mythology, and even some components of like their rituals and language that are quite similar. So that's a comparison I could draw, but they are unique in themselves as their own culture. Yeah, Polynesian generally, like yeah, Samoa, New Zealand, Hawaii. Yeah, generally they're like Pacifica nations and that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. Their cuisine is great. I have never tried it. I mean, I can only speak for my own cultures, like Maori cuisine, like hangi and that sort of thing, where we take food and we bury it and cook it, and then we unbury it, and it tastes good. So that's kind of neat, you know. Just have that hot buried food, you know. Gotta dig it up for dinner. Have a lot of cool potatoes. Actually, we have kumara. Should I just call you Invisible or Island or Invisible Island? You can call me Invisible if you want. I think Invisible's a fun word, you know? I'm visible yet invisible to most people. To anybody passing through, I'm invisible. Thank you. Hello. I'm going to attempt to pronounce your name. Q-K kakoe koe uo? Sorry? Cool. I'm going to pronounce it the way that my indigenous would pronounce it. You can just call you Ray. Rai? Okay. Cool. But I will attempt to pronounce it again, but like with a Maori pronunciation, because that's similar to Japanese pronunciation, which is kind of similar, like the vibes that I get from your name. Yeah. Ray. Okay. Kyuke kakyo kyoio is how I would pronounce it in Maori. Okay. Anyway, on to the last paragraph, baby. Okay. Based on her own experience as a hearing parent. Oh, I've already read through that. Aha. Okay. Realization that the imperative of language was passing their children by became a pinnacle upon which trajectories of families and pilgrimages shifted course. I came up with it randomly. There's no meaning or significance, just goofiness. Cool. It's a very cool name. and very difficult to say. It is very goofy. I very much appreciate it. I was like, oh no, if they follow me or something, I'm not going to be able to say who they are. No. um. Anyway, to make upon the trajectories of family pilgrimages shifted course, the climax of many families' narratives became their introduction to an alternative option as an LSM education at the institution. Even though many originally viewed sign language exposure in education as an undertaking that went against doctors' orders, the families of the institution experienced a rare opportunity in Mexico City. Integration into signing community of practice, dependence upon medical perspectives and interventions, and exposure to tragedy tropes and medicalized ideology without a significant counter-narrative, exposing the value of sign language. Actually, I had somebody think it was Hawaiian, so I went with it. Do you read mostly educational materials? Actually, this is my first time reading something that's purely academic, but I do like reading material to analyze. Like I said before, I don't know if you were here or not, but in my previous streams, I'm getting through a novel called The Book Thief. Very famous novel, if you've heard of it. Very interesting, very emotional. Has a lot of German words, which I tend to butcher. But yeah. I mean, I thought I'd start reading educational material as well, because it helps me better understand it when I read it aloud versus reading it where I'm likely to skip over things. Okay. I was wondering the scary stories dreams occur. Horror. The last time I read something that was horror, I was more disturbed than scared. It was very bad, especially since it had some topics in it which triggered me a little bit. I think I would have to research the stories which I'd be reading. If I were to do a horror stream, it would be fun. It would definitely be fun. But I think I might want to steer away from more sensitive topics. Yeah. Okay, where was I? Oh, I'm starting at the top of the page again. Wonderful. Okay. Yeah. Versatility, baby. Yeah, I just generally enjoy reading because one, it's relaxing for people, and in childhood most people, their parents read to them and everything. And it's not something that people tend to experience a lot in adulthood, especially since it's something that they're used to, and psychologically it's just something that helps us keep calm and that sort of thing. So yeah, I thought I'd give it a go, especially since I grew up with my sister and she has quite severe dyslexia. And so sometimes I'd read things to her which weren't stereotypical storybooks. Sometimes she'd get me to read Dungeons and Dragons manuals to her and that sort of thing, because she found it quite difficult to read such concentrated text, but that was easier for me. So she was able to understand it better when I read it to her. So yeah. For even people like that, in order to understand and be able to explore text to a greater degree, it's just something that I've always wanted to do. Yeah, okay. Cool. I will continue reading the paragraph. Okay. Doubt kept countless Mexican families from accessing sign language in deaf communities. Due to the limited sign-based resources and insufficient educational opportunities, not all Mexican families experience this transformational stage. However, I argue that by choosing the institution, parents were able to exert agency, their individual choices and actions reflected intentionally within the given structural constraints, while recognizing the influential power of stigma on social status, as George does. My approach views parents as more agentive and their identity is fluid. See also in Pfister. Okay, so they're referring to another article. Early states of uncertainty and discomfort within medical structures were the key propelling forces for pilgrimaging. Families to continue to seek support for their deaf children, many foraging new families they could have never anticipated. for forging many new paths, that they could have never anticipated. Recalling their early frustrations, Jorg said, "You think you're the only one. What you want is for someone to come along and tell you exactly what you need to know. That here is the institution that we rely on." The families of the institution challenged the assumptions of medicalized mainstream norms through what de Klerk calls culturality. Culturality is more reflected as agency and more restricted to implicit nouns of culture or even sociality. Instead of being passive recipients of information, de Klerk suggests people consciously choose culturality characteristics as a part of meaning-taking processes. In the case, families exercise the agency to adopt deaf and signing culturality characteristics by actively incorporating themselves into a community with shared language, common experience, and similar goals. As Francesca said, but later, as time went on, I saw more deaf children and I realized, I'm not the only one with a deaf daughter. There are many deaf children. Gabby, a mother of a deaf son at the institution, said, "Here at the institution, I learned sign language. It is as though we as mothers with deaf kids see ourselves different. Sometimes we get from each other what our own families cannot give us." The importance of a social network these women found at the institution is confirmed as they convey how contact with their families with deaf children served to reassure them and foster learning growth. This is the stark contrast to families' isolation and stigmatization from the medical system. As deaf children, signing adults, and families gathered at the institution, a community formed around a localization form of deaf culturality. In other words, families socialized with a rich context with deaf cultural values and resources, especially the practice of using sign language. Signing community at the institution constructed and circulated its own experience-based knowledge related to deafness, for which many families presented a revolutionary alternative to their medical approaches which had not otherwise worked for them. Angel's reflections reveal his realization that medical advice was not necessarily knowledge from an indisputable source. Here, Angel reflected upon the medical recommendation for vitamins and supplements purported to help develop his son's speech. What? Oh, thank you. I'm glad that my voice is present. But did you hear what this dude just said? Bruh. Okay, I'm gonna read what he actually is. What had just happened was so now when I look at the medical recommendations I received, I see now that it was total nonsense. Now looking at retrospectively, I know that it was all wrong. Yes, I believed it. I wanted it to be true. I just wasn't convinced. I mean, I'm only educated up to a certain point, but yes, I can understand that deafness isn't exactly like that. Your son is deaf. Have some vitamins. Maybe these protein supplements will help with the fact that your son cannot hear anything. You want some of that hearing supplement? Maybe his speech will improve if he takes more vitamin C, baby. Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. Yo, the Mexican healthcare system, baby, at its finest. Woo. Oh no. That's terrible. Okay. This kind of retrospective reflection and the eventual questioning or rejection of medical authority was a common theme as participants authored similar turning points in their pilgrimages. Yeah, I can understand not trusting the health system if they said, your son can't talk well, but we're going to give him vitamins for it. Then I wrote a paper and read aloud by any robot in so many years. Aww, thank you. Yeah. AI kind of scares me, in all honesty. AI is very interesting, but I think it's terrifying. I can understand how people can get into it and that sort of thing, but me personally, I think it's extremely scary. So, yeah. The future be frightening, baby. Yeah, yeah. I'm dying on the inside. Okay, moving on. So these families are like medical authority? How about no thank you? Yeah, I know there's pros, but I'm not too keen on it. I think yeah, I think maybe personally it could just be because I don't understand much of it, and mostly um how AI is is conveyed in the media. The media often assesses it to be like, oh, this could be potentially dangerous. Oh, it could take a lot of jobs from us. And so I think we're sort of pushed into thinking it in a negative way. I personally find it scary, but I think that could also be because I might be biased, as most people are. Yeah. Yeah, we can only really trust what other people tell us, and for most things, that isn't the entire truth. Or as I learned in the field that I'm currently looking into, that is also called a testimonial story, which is when you give someone a story or something they've experienced, but leave out a lot of specific information which might sway that person's point of view to be different from their own. You have to do your own research and analysis. Yes, I completely agree with the notion of having an educated opinion on things. Obviously, it's kind of hard to have an educated opinion on everything, but we can only do our best. Yeah. Uh, and it also depends on what media you look at as well, because if you look into things that you're interested in, you're more likely to come across people that agree with your notion, even if it's correct or not politically or otherwise. Yeah, you're always learning something new, exactly. And you can just incorporate that to your arsenal of knowledge and understanding and use that to interpret the world in a more holistic and interesting way, I guess. The more knowledge you have, the better the world will be in general. Knowledge is power. As somebody said, I can't remember who said it, but somebody did. Was it Martin Luther King Jr.? Did he say knowledge is power, or was it Nelson Mandela? It might have been Nelson Mandela, because he had a big notion on education, that sort of thing. So I think he's the one who said that knowledge is power, or education is power. Yes. Cool man. Angel eventually brought his son to the institution at 8 years old, and this was the family's first exposure to a community of sign language individuals. Like Hoffman-Dalloway's concept of emplacement theories, the authorial stance of these participants celebrates sign language, the cultural resources at the institution, and a positive deaf orientation. Indeed, ideological shift was precisely the transformation that brought participants to pilgrimage as a metaphorical description of their experience. Francis Bacon, quick Google research. Francis Bacon! Cool lad. Don't know much about him. I'll have to do my own research later. All I know, famous quote, good quote. Okay, we're nearing the end, boys. We're nearing the end. I don't know if you're male or female. I apologize. I use the term boy, spelled with an I, as a gender-neutral term. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. As Angel describes his personality discovery of the importance of sign language, he keys us in the internal transformation many institutional families experience. I am a he. That is good to know. Future reference. They became independent and convinced that LSM was the path for their deaf child. Yeah. Okay. And I think this is another Angel quote. It's a very cool name to give somebody. When my son began to learn sign language, another option suddenly appeared before me. Now in science he calls me Papa, so in his hands I see his voice. The voice that I'm never going to be able to hear. I'm encouraged that it gives me peace. because I always carried that pain of not being able to understand what he wanted. Aw. He had a deaf coworker that I'm still in touch with. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Him and his wife both deaf because I guess I had known and been in communication with him for such a long time. He's able to read my lips. I only know basic ASL. Well, it's good that you know any at all. I know a lot of people refuse to learn it because they think, oh, deaf people can speak, they're just not trying hard enough. A lot of them can speak to some extent, but just generally, it's just great communication. So it's good that you know some. Yeah, and yeah, deaf people are very much, they're very adaptable, they're very resilient. So yeah, they've gotten to the point where they can understand what most people are saying by reading their lips. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're very cool individuals. In my friend group, I currently have somebody who's visually impaired, not to the extent where they need a lot of support, but it's like, yeah, but you can barely tell that he has visual impairment. And it's very interesting, like, 'cause you just sort of forget about it at some points, then he's like, oh, wait, what does that say? And I'm like, oh, right, okay. then you can assist them, but they're very independent people, surprisingly, for the most part. Yeah, they're very sharp, they're very intelligent. Okay, we're almost there. Last section. Okay. Narratives like these invoke a testimonial for sign language and signing communities of practice. Like any testimonial in a neighboring Pentecostal church, it is an emotional epiphany, one leading to resolution. I heard many of these testimonial-like tales from the institutional families who told us the benefits of sign language. And they relay how sign language permitted their families to triumph, and despite the challenges they faced, even against invoking Shakespeare's call to overcome the challenges that accompanied such predicaments. Of course, the sign language testimonials like these were uncommon in Mexico City, with testimonials perpetuating miraculous, medicalized, and oralist outcomes in a far greater circulation. And as he continued, Angel illustrated how his family's experience with sign language was a point of departure from the medicalized understanding of deafness and what others faced. I was shocked. I mean, that was when I really understood that deaf people have the capacity, that my son has all this potential. But these have been long processes for us. They've been long and very complicated processes. But for me, sign language, it's my language now too, and it gives me the opportunity to get to know my son. Anyway, that was how we began to really settle into things. How we had certain reassurances. I see things as complicated, but now not nearly as complicated as I did before. And well, as though we don't see the future as dark now, you know? Ya può non vedere el futuro tan negro no. And that's the end of that's the end. We also have a conclusion, but I think it's just generally smart. Oh, hello! What a wonderful conclusion. Yeah, it was very heartwarming. I think they also have stuff about notes and references that they've made, but that's the general paragraph. Hello, you tuned in just as we finished all the reading material. Yeah, it was the entire 2 hours reading session. Yeah, it's okay. It wasn't really a story, but it was an article on deaf and hearing families in Mexico and sort of like the Mexican health system and that sort of thing. Yeah, you did miss it, but it's okay. It was very good. It talked about the Mexican health system and what it's like to raise a deaf child as a hearing parent in Mexico and the stigma that surrounds this and that sort of thing. It's very interesting and sort of how they were encouraged. Can you start over from the beginning? That took me 2 hours to read. That took me 2 hours to read. It's okay, man. I can summarize it for you. If that helps. I'm kidding. 2 hours later, yes. Okay, um, so we have a researcher institution in Mexico interviews individuals who are hearing parents with deaf children, and they tell stories of being able to like communicate with their children and learn alongside them how to communicate with them in sign language. They're finally able to understand and socialize with their children, which they weren't able to before. Against all medical advice in Mexico, which says don't teach them sign language, they have to learn how to speak, although it's with great difficulty. Yeah. Not to mention, we also learned that there was a particular antibiotic in Mexico, which is prescribed to young children, which can result in deafness. Like the movie The Sound of Metal. I haven't heard of that story. I haven't heard of that movie before. I'll write it down because it sounds interesting. But yeah, it's they talked about an antibiotic which was prescribed to children at a young age, which would cause them to go deaf, essentially. And multiple families had talked about this who were like in the same institution. At least 2 knew for certain that it was this particular antibiotic, and at least 18 of them reported that their child suddenly went deaf after being able to hear for most of their life. So, yeah, the Mexican health system is not great, especially since a lot of the time they were like, your son has trouble speaking because he can't hear? How about some vitamins? What about some placebo supplements? That might help, guys. Mm-hmm. The sound of metal. Okay, I'll look that up later. Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah, okay, well, that was the entire academic article, so that was nice. Yeah, if there's anything you guys want to talk about, you can just like spitball anything that you want to say. My voice is very tired. I think I need a little bit of a break. Yes, I am from New Zealand. Yay! Did you read through the chat? Because my accent isn't very Kiwi, so I doubt you'll be able to recognize it from that. I am in fact Kiwi. I am from New Zealand. Yeah, where are you from? I can tell from your accent. How? I don't have a Kiwi accent though. That's so strange. Maybe I have some Kiwi inflections, maybe, but most people think I'm either British or American from my accent. But thank you. That's a massive compliment for me because I've always been sort of when growing up, people always said that I sounded like a foreigner. Oh, I've got a friend who's Maori who is from Canada. Yeah, that's so cool. Apparently, there's like a large Maori community in Canada. That's so cool. Yeah, big fan of Flight of the Conchords too. Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I have yet to investigate Flight of the Conchords, but I've heard that it's very good, despite being a New Zealander. It's is it a classical piece? I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure it's a classical piece, but yeah, I've yet to investigate it, but I will eventually. I'll also add it to the list of recommendations. You're giving a lot of good media references. The Concords. You're just full of good references, aren't you, Roland? You need to more professional over here. Definitely not a classical piece, lol. So is it so it's a comedy duo. Because I definitely heard of it before. I've heard of the name Flight of the Conchords, but I don't know. I don't know. It's on my notes now. I can look at it later alongside The Sound of Metal. Yeah, you've got a lot of interesting knowledge to contribute. That is very valued. Yeah, I'm gonna learn a lot from this. Yeah, most of the comedy that I seek out is mostly British. I'm not surprisingly, I'm not much of a fan of New Zealand comedy for some reason. I don't know why. Check out Andrei Tarkovsky films. I will also write that down. Tarkovsky films. Stalker was great. Okay. Stalker. Nice. Oh, thank you for the recommendations. This is all very good. I'll look it up later. Mirror is wonderful. Is that also like a portion of the Tarkovsky films? I'll also put that in. Mirror. Nice. Yay. It's good to finally finish that reading. It's a film that is. Yeah. In terms of like particular directors that I like, in terms of movie directors, I'm a basic bitch. I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan. A very big fan of Interstellar. Love the soundtrack, love the visuals. Makes me cry and have an existential crisis every single time I watch it. Amazing. Also, in terms of New Zealand directors, Takeo Waititi, widely known one, also very, very good. Who doesn't like Nolan? Exactly. Who doesn't like Nolan? Great director. Yeah. My friends have been trying to get me into Quentin Tarantino. I just finished watching Pulp Fiction not too long ago. Very interesting film. I liked it a lot. But the man has a very interesting fascination of feet. So, something to look out for, I guess. Oh well. Yeah, I mean, people often like give me directors and authors and stuff to look up, but I mostly know people by like the media they create. Last year is good. Okay. Ooh, lots of good recommendations, guys. Thank you. Lars von Trier or Trier, I don't know. Michelangelo Antini, Tarkovsky, David Lynch, Louis Buñuel, Ingmar Bergman. Favorite directors. Good. I'm a big fan of like films that explore like abstract concepts. I love films with twists like um M. Night Shyamalan, great director. Sixth Sense was my favorite movie for a very, very long time. Von Trier did Dancer in the Dark of Nymphomatic. Those will tick those boxes. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. There are a bunch of good Taika Waititi films, which I think you guys would enjoy as well. Like, I really truly, there are a couple of really good, like, very Kiwi focused movies which he has done, like Boy and Hunt for the Wilder People, What We Do in the Shadows, Whale Rider, that kind of thing. Twin Peaks for a TV series. I've heard of Twin Peaks before. Yeah. Okay. I've heard of Twin Peaks, but I haven't watched it before. Yeah. Nice. Hmm. Okay. It's a great journey. Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm quite tired. So sorry, Owen. I'm gonna have to cut your experience with my stream very shortly because I have been reading for almost 2.5 hours. My throat is very sore. What we do in the shadows is to make Flight Concords do it. Oh, right, right. Yeah, yeah, a great movie. I love What We Do in the Shadows because it's based on where I used to live. Oh, damn it. Hello. Why is everyone coming in when I'm about to end the stream? Bloody hell. Hello. Hope you're having a good day, night, morning, evening, whatever you're experiencing. Time to rest. Yeah. I'm going to talk for a while longer. You look cute. Thank you. I guess I'm not cute. I'm just very tired. Hydrate, by the way. Thank you for reminding me. There's a reason why I have a massive drink bottle. Okay. I could see if I could read something short. If you guys are into kids' books, I have a bunch of them, which would be kind of funny to read. Um, Successful stream. Yes. I might read something short to you guys. Just like something which, yeah, I think this will be a cute book to read, I think. Okay. A very short book, as you can see. I might read a couple of chapters, but the words are very big, so you could be fine. Have you guys ever heard of the Roald Dahl book called Esio Trot? It's backwards for tortoise. I'll read a little bit of this just for the people that just came in, so that you can experience some of the stream, the type of stream that I'm going to be providing. Yes, I've heard the author. Yeah, Roald Dahl does some good stuff. I don't think he was a very good person, but he wrote very good children's literature. Okay. Esio Trot. Mr. Hoppy lived in a small flat, high up in a tall concrete building. He lived alone. He had always been a lonely man, and now that he was retired from work, he was more lonely than ever. He wasn't a very good person. There were two loves in Mr. Hoppy's life. One was the flowers he grew on his balcony. They grew in pots and tubs and baskets in the summer. The little balcony became a riot of color. Mr. Hoppy's second love was a secret he kept for entirely himself. Sorry, I'm so tired. I can't read children's books now. I'm losing it. But it's kind of funny, so I'm going to keep going. The balcony immediately below Mr. Hoppy's gutted out a good bit further from the building of his own, so Mr. Hoppy always had a fine view of what was going on down there. His balcony belonged to an attractive middle-aged lady called Mrs. Silver. Mrs. Silver was a widow who also lived alone, and although she didn't know it, she was who was the object of Mr. Hoppy's secret love. Oh, that's kind of cute. He loved her from his balcony for many years, but he was a very shy man, and he had never been able to bring himself to give her even the smallest hint of his love. Yeah, overcome my tiredness. Every morning, Mr. Hoppy and Mrs. Silver exchanged polite conversation, the one looking down from above and the other looking up. But that was as far as it went. The distance between their balconies might not have been more than a few yards, but to Mr. Hoppy it seemed like a million miles. He longed to invite Mrs. Silver up for a cup of tea and a biscuit, but every time he was about to form the words in his lips, his courage failed him. And as I said, he was a very, very shy man. Oh, if only, he kept telling himself, if only he could do something tremendous, like saving her life, or rescuing her from a gang of armed thugs. If only he could perform a great feat that would make him a hero in her eyes. If only the trouble with Mrs. Silver is that she gave all her love to someone else. That someone was a small tortoise called Alfie. Every day, when Mr. Hoppy looked over his balcony and saw Mrs. Silver whispering endearments to Alfie and stroking his shell, he felt absurdly jealous. My man's jealous of a tortoise. Nice. He wouldn't have even minded becoming a tortoise himself if it meant Mrs. Silver stroking his shell every morning and whispering endearments to him. My man's down bad, damn. Jealous of a tortoise, I know. My man's down bad for this lady. Okay. Alfie had been with Mrs. Silver for years, and he lived on her balcony summer and winter. Planks had been balanced on the sides of his balcony so Alfie could walk without toppling over the edge. And in one corner there was a little house into which Alfie would crawl and sleep every night to keep warm. What, a tortoise? Yes, a tortoise. Hence the title, Esio Trot, which, if you flip backwards, it says tortoise. Yes, it's a tortoise. Lady loves tortoise. Man is jealous of tortoise because she's affectionate towards tortoise. Mrs. Silver would fill Alfie's house with dry hay, and the tortoise would crawl in there and bury himself under the hay and go to sleep for months on end. Trot. Yeah. Without food or water. This is called hibernating. Very educational. In early spring, when Alfie felt the warmer weather through his shell, he would wake up and crawl very slowly out of his house onto the balcony. And Mrs. Silver would clap her hands with joy and cry out, "Welcome back, my darling one! Oh, how I have missed you!" It was at times like this that Mr. Hoppy wished more than ever that he could change places with Elfie and become a tortoise. Now we came to a certain bright morning in May, when something happened that changed and indeed electrified Mr. Hoppy's life. He was leaning over his balcony rail, watching Mrs. Silver serving Elfie his breakfast. "Here's the heart of the lettuce for you, my lovely," she kept saying. "Here's a slice of fresh tomato and a piece of crisp celery." "Good morning, Mrs. Silver," Mr. Hoppy said. "Elfie's looking well this morning." "Isn't he gorgeous?" Mrs. Silver said, looking up and beaming at him. "Absolutely gorgeous," Mr. Hoppy said, not meaning it. What a fucking savage. I mean, if you say he's gorgeous, but I think he looks like shit. And now he looked down at Mrs. Silver's smiling face, gazing up into his own. He thought for the thousandth time how pretty she was, how sweet and gentle and full of kindness, and his heart ached with love. Gorgeous tortoise, my boy Alfie out here getting the letters. Heck yeah. "So I do wish he would grow a little bit faster," Miss Silver was saying. "Every spring he wakes up from his winter sleep, I weigh him on the kitchen scales. Do you know that all in 11 years he's not gained any more than 3 ounces? That's almost nothing." "What does he weigh now?" Mr. Hoppy asked. "Just 13 ounces. Just about as much as a grapefruit." Okay, I appreciate the comparison in this book because I don't work in ounces. I barely know what an ounce is. All I know is that it's sort of like it's a fraction of a pound, I think. I don't know. I work with the metric system. I don't know what an ounce is, baby. Yeah. "Yes, well, tortoises are very slow growers," Mr. Hoppy said solemnly, "but they can live for 100 years." "I know that," Mrs. Silver said, "but I do so wish he would grow a little bit bigger. He's such a tiny wee fellow." "He seems just as fine as he is," Mr. Hoppy said. "Oh, he's not fine," Mrs. Silver cried. "Try to think how miserable it must make him feel to be so titchy." 16 ounces a pound, apparently. Oh, so the tortoise weighs less than a single pound. That's kind of frightening. But I guess if it's a small tortoise, it's fine. "Everyone wants to grow up. That's not how tortoises work, lady. I think he's fine being the size that he is." Yep. "You really would love him to grow bigger, wouldn't you?" Mr. Hoppy said. Even as he said it, his mind suddenly went click, and an amazing idea came rushing into his head. "Of course I would," Mrs. Silver cried. "I'd give anything to make it happen. Why, I've seen pictures of giant tortoises, so huge people can ride on their backs. If Elfie were to see one of those, he would turn green with envy." "I think he's already green, lady. I don't." He's already green. Not to mention, those are a different species of tortoise. A different species that I gather. I doubt that she has a Galapagos tortoise on her balcony. I think she just has like a domesticated one. Poor Elfie, man. Man's getting burnt alive here. He's just vibing. Mr. Hoppy's mind was spinning like a flywheel. "Here, surely. This is a big chance. Grab it," he told himself. "Grab it quick. Mrs. Silver, I do actually happen to know how to make tortoises grow faster. If that's what you really want. Or it is a tortoise." Yeah, I'm most familiar with giant tortoises in terms of like Galapagos ones. I don't think I've heard of a desert one before. I'll have to look that up later as well. I do actually. You do? Oh, please tell me. Am I feeding him the wrong things? I worked in North Africa once," Mr. Hoppy said. "That's where all the tortoises in England came from. And a Bedouin tribesman told me the secret." "Tell me," cried Mrs. Silver. "I beg you, tell me, Mr. Hoppy. your slave for life. Lady, this is problematic. I'll be your slave for life. No. No. That's terrible. I beg you, I'll be your slave for life. Mrs. Silver, stop it. That escalated quickly? Yes, it did. When he heard the words slave for life, a little shiver of excitement swept through Mr. Hoppy. Ah! I beg you. What the fuck? Damn, Roald Dahl kind of fucked up, am I right? What the hell? Slave for life. Ah, that's scary. Wait here, he said. I'll go. I remember what happens in this story, oh no. Oh, it only gets worse from here. It only gets worse from here. This is a children's book. This is a children's story. Wait there, he said. I'll have to go in and write some things down for you. In a couple of minutes, Mr. Hoppy was back on the balcony with a sheet of paper in his hand. I'm going to lower it to you on a bit of string, he said, or it might blow away. Here it comes. Mrs. Silver caught the paper and held it in front of her. This is what it said. Esio trot, Teg rebeb. Ikmok no Esio trot. Walk poo, tis poo, gris poo, wolg poo, Lewis poo, ikrog, esklug, futz plug, tup no taff, Esio trot, tup no taff. Tig no, eblog doof. Yes, peak literature right here. In case you think I'm lying, this is the page. In case you don't know, what does it mean? Is it another language? It's tortoise language. It's tortoise language, baby. Tortoises are very backwards creatures. Therefore, they can only understand words that are written backwards. That's obvious, isn't it? I suppose so, Mrs. Silver said, bewildered. Esio trot is simply tortoise, spelled backwards. Yeah, it's very obvious, my guy. Very. Mr. Hoppy said, look at it. So it is, Mrs. Silver said. The other words are spelled backwards, too. Mr. Hoppy said, if you turn them around in human language, they simply say, tortoise, get bigger. Come on, tortoise. Grow up, puff up, shoot up, spring up, blob, swell up. Gorge, guzzle, stuff, gulp. Put on fat, tortoise. Put on fat. Get on, gobble food. Nice. Mrs. Silver examined the magic words on the paper more closely. I guess you're right, she said. How clever. But there's an awful lot of poo in it. Are they something special? Poo is a very strong word in any language. Tortoise with a monocle. Yes. Beautiful. Mr. Hoppy said, especially with tortoises. What you have to do, Miss Silver, is hold Alfie up to your face and whisper these words to him 3 times a day. Morning, noon, and night. Let me hear you practice very slowly and stumbling a little over the strange words. Mrs. Silver read the whole message out loud in tortoise language. Not bad, Mr. Hoppy said, but try to get a little more expression into it. When you say it to Alfie, do it properly. I'll bet you anything like that. I'll bet you anything like that in a few months' time he'll be twice as big as he is now. I'll try it, Mrs. Silver said. I'll try anything. Of course I will. But I can't believe it'll work. You wait and see, Mr. Hoppy said, smiling at her. Yes, he is a very proper tortoise. Yes, Alfie. Oh, poor Alfie. Back in his flat, Mr. Hoppy was simply quivering all over with excitement. Slave for life, he kept repeating to himself. What bliss! No! Quivering, I say. He's quivering with excitement with the fact that this full-grown woman is going to be his slave for life. That's great. But there was a lot of work to be done before that happened. I was going into the story because I remembered it being wholesome when my mum read it to me. But this is kind of fucked up. The only furniture in Mr. Hobby's small living room was a table and two chairs. That's kind of sad. These he moved into his bedroom. He went out and bought a thick sheet of canvas and spread it over the entire living room floor to protect his carpet. Next he got the telephone book and wrote down the address of every pet shop in the city. There were 14 of them altogether. We are teetering into bizarre territory. We're reading in it. We're already in it. I think it's about to get more bizarre because I've read this before and I remember what happens, and it's so nuts. Okay. It took him 2 days to visit each pet shop and choose his tortoises. He wanted a great many, at least 100, perhaps more. He had to choose them very carefully. To you and me, there is not much difference between one tortoise and another. They only differ in their size and the color of their shells. Alfie was a darker shell, so Mr. Hobby chose only the darker shelled tortoises for his great collection. Size, of course, was everything. Mr. Hobby chose all sorts of sizes, some weighing only slightly more than Alfie's 13 ounces, other a great deal more. I don't know whether you can see where this is going or not, but it's not going to be great. But he didn't want any to weigh less. Feed them cabbage leaves, the pet owner said. That's all they'll need, and a bowl of water. When he was finished, Mr. Hobby in his enthusiasm bought no less than 140 tortoises. He carried them home in baskets, 10 or 15 at a time. This is going to get weirder. It already has. You can't see this, but his floor is covered in tortoises. This is animal abuse. No, Mr. Hobby, stop. Stop, Mr. Hobby, please. No. Ah. No. The poor tortoises. Holy shiitake mushrooms. Exactly. This man's insane. In case you can't see his eyes, I'm gonna show you the image again, so you can see his eyes a bit better. He's insane. Absolute madman. Look at this guy with his fucking tortoises. We have a room loaded with tortoises. Yes. The poor tortoises. I mean, they seem to be happy enough, but he lives for tortoises, man. He doesn't live for tortoises. He's doing all this. You'll find out in a bit. I'm so sorry. He had to make a lot of trips, and it was quite exhausting. At the end of it, it was worth it. Boy, it was worth it. And what an amazing sight his living room floor was. There they were all together. The floor was swarming with tortoises of different sizes. Some walking slowly and exploring, some munching cabbage leaves, others drinking water from a big shallow dish. They just made the faintest rustling sound as they moved over the canvas sheet, but that was all. Mr. Hoppy had to pick his way carefully on his toes between the moving sea of brown shells whenever he walked across the room. But enough of that. He must get on with the job. Can you guess what happens next? Before he retired, Mr. Hoppy had been a mechanic in a bus garage, and now he went back to his old place of work and asked his mates if he could use an old bench for an hour or two. What he had to do now was make something that could reach down from his own balcony to Mrs. Silver's balcony and pick up a tortoise. This was not difficult for a mechanic like Mr. Hoppy. First, he had made 2 metal claws, or fingers, that were attached to the end of a long metal tube. He ran 2 stiff wires alongside the tube and connected them to the metal claws in such a way that when you pulled the wires, the claws closed. and when you pushed them, the claws opened. The wires were joined to a handle at the other end of the tube. It was all very simple. Mr. Hoppy was ready to begin. Poor Alfie. Man's about to get kidnapped, man. He's just gonna steal Alfie. No. Mrs. Silver had a part-time job. She worked from noon till 5 o'clock. Imagine going through the process of writing this all together. Man. I gotta hand it to Roald Dahl. This is creative, but kind of fucked up. This is kind of fucked up. It's some good shit, bro. He's written some wacky shit, man. He worked from noon until 5 o'clock every weekday afternoon at the shop that sold newspapers and sweets. Made a lot of things easier for Mr. Hoppy. It was good shit. It surely was good shit. So on the first exciting afternoon, after he had made sure that Mrs. Silver had gone to work, Mr. Hoppy went out onto his balcony, armed with his long metal pole. He called this the tortoise catcher. He leaned over the balcony railings and lowered the pole to Mrs. Silver's balcony below. Alfie was basking in the pale light over to one side. "Hello, Alfie," Mr. Hoppy said. "You're about to go for a little ride." He wiggled the tortoise catcher until it was right above Alfie. He pushed the lever so that the claws opened wide, lowered the two claws neatly over Alfie's shell, pulled the lever, and the claws were closed tight over the shell like two fingers of a hand. He hauled Alfie up to his own balcony. It was easy. Good thing he didn't fucking drop him, Jesus. Mr. Hoppy weighed Alfie in his own kitchen scales to make sure that Mrs. Silver's figure of 13 ounces was correct. It was. Now holding Alfie in one hand, he picked his way through his huge collection of tortoises to find one that first of all had the same color shell as Alfie, and secondly weighed exactly 2 ounces more. 2 ounces is not much. It is less than a smallish hen's egg. But you see, the important thing in Mr. Hoppy's plan was that to make sure the new tortoise was bigger than Alfie, but only a tiny bit bigger. The difference had to be so small that Mrs. Silver wouldn't notice it. So from his vast collection, it was not difficult for Mr. Hoppy to find the tortoise he wanted. He wanted one that weighed 15 ounces exactly on the kitchen scales, no more, no less. When he had got it, he put it on the kitchen table side by side Alfie, and you could hardly tell that one was bigger than the other, but it was bigger by 2 ounces. This was tortoise number 2. Mr. Hoppy took tortoise number 2 out onto the balcony, gripped it in its claws of the tortoise catcher, and lowered it onto Mrs. Silver's knee, right beside a nice fresh lettuce. Tortoise number 2 had never eaten tender, juicy lettuce leaves before. He had only known the thick old cabbage leaves. It loved lettuce and started chomping away with great gusto. There followed a rather nervous 2 hours wait for Mrs. Silver's return from work. Would you see any difference between the new tortoise and Alfie? It was going to be a tense moment. On the balcony sweat Mrs. Silver. "Alfie, my darling," she cried out. "Mummy's back. Have you missed me?" Mr. Hoppy peered over his railing, and well, hidden under 2 large potted plants, he held his breath. The new tortoise was still chomping away at the lettuce. My, Alfie, you do seem hungry today," Mrs. Silver was saying. "It must be Mr. Hoppy's magic words have been whispering to you." Mr. Hoppy watched as Mrs. Silver picked the tortoise up and stroked its shell. When she fished Mr. Hoppy's piece of paper out of her pocket, holding the tortoise very close to her face, he whispered, reading from the paper, Esio trot, tig rabab, tig rabab. Emok no Esio trot. Walk poo, talk poo, grips poo, Wobbloo Lewis poo, Igrog Islug Futz plug, put no taff, Esio trot, put no taff, take no, Iblog doof. Mr. Hobby popped his head over the foliage and called out, "Good evening, Mrs. Silver. How was Alfie tonight?" "Oh, he's lovely," Mrs. Silver said and looked up, beaming. "He's developing such an appetite. I've never seen him eat like this before. It must be the magic words." More backward language dialogue. Yes. "You never know," Mr. Hoppy said. "You never know." Mr. Hoppy waited 7 whole days before making his next move. On the afternoon of the 7th day, Mrs. Silver was at work. He lifted tortoise number 2 from the balcony and brought it into his living room. Number 2 weighed exactly 15 ounces. He must now find a tortoise that weighed exactly 17 ounces, 2 ounces more. From his enormous collection, he easily found a 17-ounce tortoise once again. He made sure that the shells matched in color, then he lowered tortoise number 3 onto Mrs. Silver's balcony. And as you would have guessed by now, Mr. Hoppy's secret was a very simple one. If a creature grows slowly enough, I mean very, very slowly indeed, you'll never notice that it has grown at all, especially if you see it every day. It's the same with children. They are actually growing taller every week, but their mothers never notice until they grow out of their clothes. Slowly it does, Mr. Hoppy told himself. Don't hurry it. And so this is how things went on for the next 8 weeks. In the beginning, Alfie was 13. And then the next one, tortoise number 2, was 15. Then 17, 19, 21, 23, 25. And then finally, on the end of the 7th week, tortoise number 8 weighed 27 ounces. Alfie's weight was 13 ounces. Tortoise number 28 was 27 ounces. Very slowly over 7 weeks, Mrs. Silver's pet had more than doubled in size. The lady hadn't noticed a thing. Even to Mr. Hoppy peering over his railing, tortoise number 8 looked pretty big. It was amazing that Mrs. Silver had hardly noticed anything all during the great operation. Only once had she looked up and said, "You know, Mr. Hoppy, I believe he's getting a bit bigger. What do you think?" "I can't see a lot of difference myself," Mr. Hoppy had answered casually. Man keeps kidnapping and replacing her tortoises. No. Man is such a simp that he went out, bought 140 tortoises, and is replacing them every week to trick his love interest into thinking that her tortoise is growing, when in fact it's no longer her tortoise at all. But now perhaps it was time to call a halt. And that evening Mr. Hoppy was just about to go out and suggest to Mrs. Silver she ought to weigh Alfie. And then a startled cry from the balcony below brought him outside fast. "Look," Mrs. Silver was shouting, "Alfie's too big to get into the door of this little house. He must have grown enormously." "Weigh him," Mr. Hoppy ordered. "Take him to the kitchen and weigh him quickly." Mrs. Silver did just that, and half a minute later she was holding the tortoise in both hands, waving it above her head, and shouting, "Guess what, Mr. Hoppy, guess what? He weighs 27 ounces. He's twice as big as he was before. Oh, you darling," stroking the tortoise. "Oh, you big, wonderful boy. Look at what clever Mr. Hoppy has done for you." Mr. Hoppy suddenly felt very brave. "Mrs. Silver," he said, "do you think I could pop down to your balcony and hold Alfie myself?" "Why, of course you can," Mrs. Silver cried. "Come down at once." Mr. Hoppy rushed down the stairs, and Mrs. Silver opened the door for him. Together they went out into the balcony. "Just look at him," Mrs. Silver said proudly. "Isn't he grand?" "He's a big, good-sized tortoise now," Mr. Hoppy said. "And you did it," cried Mrs. Silver. "You're a miracle man. You are indeed." "What am I going to do about his house?" Mrs. Silver said. "He must have a house to go into at night." but he can't get through the door now. They were standing on the balcony looking at the tortoise who was trying to push his way into his house, but he was too big. I shall have to enlarge the door, Mrs. Silver said. Don't do that, said Mr. Hoppy. He mustn't go chopping up such a pretty little house. After all, he only needs to be just a tiny bit smaller. That's how we could get him. How could he possibly get smaller? That's simple. Change the magic words. Instead of telling him to get bigger and bigger, tell him to get a bit smaller. But in tortoise language, of course. Will that work? Of course it'll work. Tell me exactly what I have to say, Mr. Hoppy. Mr. Hoppy got out a piece of paper and pencil, wrote, Esio trot, tig a tib rebalis. A tib rebalis. That'll do it, Mr. Silver, he said, handing over the paper. I don't mind trying it, Mrs. Silver said. But look over here, I don't want him to get titchy all over again, Mr. Hoppy. He won't, dear lady, he won't, Mr. Hoppy said. Say it only at night and morning. Tonight and tomorrow morning, and you'll see what happens. We might be lucky. If it works, said Mrs. Silver, touching him softly on the arm, then you are the cleverest man alive. This is so ridiculous. Well, it is a kid's book, but like, Mr. Hoppy is quite a questionable man. Look, he looks so fucking smug. Look at him. For a man who owns over 140 tortoises, he's very smug. Yeah, right as shit. Very true. The next afternoon, as soon as Mrs. Silver had gone to work, Mr. Hoppy lifted up the tortoise from her balcony and carried it inside. All he had to do was now find one that was a shade smaller, so that it could go down to the little house. He chose one and lowered it down to the tortoise catcher. Still gripping the tortoise, he tested to see if it would go through the door. It wouldn't, so he chose another. Again he tested it. This one went through nicely. Good. He placed the tortoise in the middle of the balcony, beside a nice piece of lettuce, and went inside to await Mrs. Silver's homecoming. Yeah, I did it all. Yeah. I did all this for my girl, you know. I did it so she could be my slave for life, baby. That evening, Mr. Hoppy was watering his plants on the balcony, when suddenly he heard Mrs. Silver shout from the balcony, a shrill of excitement. Mr. Hoppy, where are you? She was shouting, just look at this. Yeah, he is a strange fruit. Mr. Hoppy popped his head over the railing and said, What's up? Oh, Mr. Hoppy, it worked, she was crying. My magic words worked again on Elsie. You can now get through the door of this little house. It's a miracle. Can I come down and look? Mr. Hoppy shouted back. Come down at once, my dear man. Mrs. Silver answered. Come down at once and see the elders you have worked upon my darling Elfie. Mr. Hoppy turned and ran from the balcony into the living room, jumping on tiptoe like a ballet dancer through the sea of tortoises that covered the floor. He flung open his front door and flew down the stairs, two at a time, with the love songs of 1,000 cupids ringing in his ears. This is it, he whispered to himself under his breath. The greatest moment of my life is coming up now. I mustn't bosh it. I must keep very calm. Oh, bruh. My man sounds like a guy who got a reply from their favorite OnlyFans creator. He's like, I can't screw this up. I need to remain calm. I've done so much for this moment. I've paid so much damn money. How much would 140 tortoises even cost? That's so much money. Oh, and Mrs. Silver already started opening the door, waiting to welcome him with a huge smile on her face. She flung her arms around him and cried out, You really are the most wonderful man I have ever met. You can do anything. Come in at once and let me make you a cup of tea. That is the very least you deserve. Remain calm. I'm doing something nonsensical. Yay. Seated in the comfortable armchair, Mrs. Silver's parlour, sipping his tea, Mr. Hoppy was all of a what? Mr. Hoppy was all of it a twitter. A twitter? I don't know what that means. Roald Dahl does like to make up words sometimes, but okay. He looked at the lovely lady sitting opposite him and smiled at her. She smiled right back at him. That smile of hers was so warm and friendly, he suddenly gave him the courage he needed, and he said, Mrs. Silver, will you please marry me? Why, Mr. Hoppy, I didn't think you'd get round to asking me. Of course I'll marry you. Even the first day, straight to marriage. Nice. Mr. Hoppy got rid of his teacup, and the two of them stood and embraced in the middle of the room. It's all due to Alfie, Mrs. Silver said, slightly breathless. Good old Alfie, Mr. Hoppy said. We'll keep him forever. The next morning, Mr. Hoppy took all his other tortoises back to the pet shops and said they could have them all for nothing. And he cleaned up his living room, not leaving a leaf of cabbage nor trace of a tortoise. A few weeks later, Mrs. Silver became Mrs. Hoppy, and the two of them lived happily ever after. P.S. I expect you're wondering what happened to the original Alfie. The first of them, well, he was bought a week after from the pet shops by a small girl named Roberta Squibb. He settled down in Roberta's garden every day, and she fed him lettuce and tomato slices and crispy celery. And in the winters, he hibernated in a box of dried leaves in the tool shed. That was a long time ago. Roberta has grown up and is now married and has two children of her own and lives in another house, but Alfie is still with her, is still a much-loved family pet. Roberta reckons that by now he must be about 30 years old. It has taken him all that time to grow twice the size he was when Mrs. Silver had him, but he made it there in the end. Well, at least Alfie isn't suffering, but man got kidnapped and sent to another household. And that's the end of the story. I don't know how to feel about that. That was interesting. I don't know if that's an end. Well, they're married now, and Alfie is vibing as a family pet elsewhere, so at least we know that things turned out okay for him. Oh no. Yeah, we just facilitated the prisoner system, so let's get married. No, Mr. Hoppy. Mr. Hoppy was the original Sip Man. She went along with it. He said this is the happiest moment of his life. And he spent several months and potentially several thousands of dollars on 140 tortoises so he could trick a lady into marrying him. He's so down bad. He was like, oh, please, pet me like your tortoises, please. I'm begging you. Talk to me. I want to be tortoise, please. No. Mr. Hoppy, no. No. Well, I've been reading for 3 hours. Imagine reading it to... Yeah, this is something that my mum read to me when I was little. I also have a bunch of other Roald Dahl books. I wonder if I need to go through those as well. This is definitely one of the shortest ones. I might read another one of those next time. But for now, I think I might end the stream, because I have been on for 3 hours. Okay. I wish you the best, whatever time of day it is for you. For me, it's currently quite late at night. Have a nice day. I'll end it there. Goodbye.